Hello and welcome to WGTC Radio, the official podcast of entertainment website We Got This Covered. I'm Jonathan Lack.
And I am Sean Chapman.
And we are here to talk about a really good video game.
Yes, we are.
We are here to talk about The Last of Us, the new video game by developers Naughty Dog for the PlayStation 3. Came out about 2 weeks ago, so y'all have had time to play it if you've wanted to. If you haven't, play the fucking game.
Yeah.
Quick spoiler-free reaction to people who maybe have not picked it up yet.
Play the game.
Okay, that's it?
It's I think probably one of the most significant games. It's like looking forward to the future. I think one of the most significant games to be made. Like the stuff they do with storytelling is so far above what has been done in like 99% of every video game ever made. That yes, play this fucking game.
Yeah, I completely agree. This game is a revelation. It is one of the. It's just so. Gaming is so different than other art forms right now because the history of video games is still being written.
Yeah.
The canon is still, being made, and this is one of those canonical moments, and it is so exciting to live through that.
Yeah.
It really is. So play The Last of Us. It's on PlayStation 3. If you don't have a PlayStation 3, get a PlayStation 3 just so you can play Last of Us.
Yeah, and Beyond Two Souls, and like God of War 3, and Infamous 1 and 2.
There's a lot of good
games. 2 and 3, and Killzone 2 and 3.
Yes.
Heavy Rain.
2 and 3.
Well, no, just
Okay,
Heavy Rain and Journey.
Okay.
And the most important one of all, Tokyo Jungle.
Yes.
Like, that's the game you really need to play.
Yes.
Tokyo Jungle, not well known. Sequel to The Last of Us is my... connection. They have a very similar, interesting aesthetic. That was like their visions of the post-apocalypse.
It is kind of funny. Some of the parts where you're in a city felt to me like, oh, am I going to see a Pomeranian?
Yeah. This is like there's just a fucking dinosaur's going to walk around the corner. All of a sudden, like all this stuff is because of time travel. Like who knows?
Who knows? All right. So as usual, if you've heard one of our movie or video game, in-depth discussions, we're going to spoil the hell out of this. Talk about it, assuming you have played the game back to front.
Yeah.
And
front to back.
Yep.
Because playing it back to front would be really weird. I didn't know. Did you find some sort of bizarre level select code and just I'm going to start from the last cinematic, work all the way back to the opening one?
Yeah, the game would not be as good that way.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right, so we'll talk about it. We will basically be talking about campaign. Sean has played a little multiplayer.
I've more than a little.
I've
played
okay.
a pretty significant amount of multiplayor.
Do you want to talk about that later in the podcast?
Sure, I'll probably bring it up because it is actually surprisingly really, really good.
Okay, we'll talk about that at the end. I did not have time to get into multiplayer just because it's a reasonably long campaign.
Yeah.
I had to finish that. So in any case, let's get started. Spoilers from this point out. Let's go in with a deeper overall reaction. Sean, The Last of Us, where do you want to start with your reaction?
Oh man, that's a hard question. I guess for me, like my personal takeaway from this game, because this is sort of, over the past couple of months, I have been playing all the PS3 exclusives that I missed, and one of the more interesting ones were Uncharted 2 and 3, because those are particularly Uncharted 2 is sort of, a lot of people claim that as being one of the watershed games of this generation, because it sort of does define this third-person action platformer, super cinematic, fantastic storytelling, fantastic voice acting, and that was the Naughty Dog standard, and people looked at that as this is one of the best games of this generation. And for me, I saw why people would find that in that game, but it fell, and part of this is because it was built up so much for me that it's it fell really short of expectations, because while the gameplay is not terrible, it's not phenomenal, and the story is a lot of fun, but there's not anything, it's like an Indiana Jones movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a really fun movie, but that's kind of it. You're not going to dig into Raiders and find interesting deep themes and this broad character development and an ambiguous ending that's what does this all mean? You're not going to write this insightful analytical essay on the themes of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
So it's that's fine. It doesn't need to be that. But for a video game, if that's what your story is, your gameplay needs to be a lot better. I don't give a shit that Gears of War's story sucks, because Gears of War is a lot of fun to play. With Uncharted, it's your presentation for the story is fucking phenomenal. The writing is great, the voice acting is great, but you're not setting a high bar for yourself on what you're actually trying to do in the story. And the gameplay didn't hold it up. And then there's the obvious thing of, hey, you're supposed to be Nathan Drake, charming rogue adventurer who's, goes and finds, archaeological tombs, and he's, has, 5,000 girlfriends or whatever. He's basically Indiana Jones. Except for when you're playing a video game, part of the necessity of a video game is that you have to fight a lot of enemies. And when your video game is a third-person cover-based shooter, you're shooting and killing just hundreds of people. So there's this, like, and usually, when you're playing a video game at some point, you have to, it's like kind of like the video game version of suspension of disbelief at a certain point, of like, whatever. Like literally in the context of the story, Nathan Drake is not killing thousands of people. Like, you can deject yourself enough to, like, be like, okay, like, it's like a fucking musical. The people are not literally fucking singing, like, in the context of what's going on in the play. That's, like, a weird stylistic thing. But at a certain point, it is sort of just so distracting of, like, the dude in the cutscene is not this guy who's just taking an AK and mowing down, like, fucking half of, like, this country's population, And that's brought rise to this term called ludonarrative dissonance, which is that your gameplay and your story don't match effectively. So that's where the dissonance comes from.
Other really great examples of that are the Rockstar games, Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption have a lot of that.
Yeah, where particularly, like, Grand Theft Auto 4 is a lot of, like, I don't want to be in this situation, like, let me out, like, I don't want to, I fought through this terrible war when I was in Serbia, and I don't want to have to kill people. It's like every single mission is like, dude, you just had a turret sequence where you killed, like, dozens and dozens of people in the span of, like, a minute. And you just went on, like, you just robbed a bank and literally just killed, like, the entire, like, police force of New York. Like, It's just, they're all dead if this was, like, realistic. So, yeah.
And this is my reaction to The Last of Us, is that the more, I think as we get to the end of this generation, we're seeing more games that are tackling this notion of ludonarrative dissonance.
Yeah.
We talked about BioShock Infinite earlier this year. I thought it definitely has elements of that.
Yeah.
But it's a great example of contextualizing violence to a certain degree within the character arcs, and really making you feel like the gameplay and the story are very intertwined.
Yeah.
Last of Us takes that concept to the nth degree.
Yeah.
If I've been thinking about how I would sum up my reaction to the game, and I think everything I have to say about it stems from the fact that this is the smallest amount of ludonarrative dissonance I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah.
And, the more I play games like this, and especially when I see a game that does it so well like Last of Us, even back in the day, Grand Theft Auto 4 at a certain point kind of felt broken to me because of that. Like, the police narrative, actually, I had a lot of trouble finishing Grand Theft Auto 4 past that police mission because that mission just felt so out of whack with the story. And Grand Theft Auto 4, the campaign, I'm not a big fan of. And that's part of it. And especially now that I look back at some of the earlier games of this generation and see how far a developer like Naughty Dog has been able to come and do this in Last of Us, it's miraculous, and it's something where I think this is a turning point where we're going to judge games in the past and future a little differently because of this.
Yeah, like, hopefully it's something that a lot of game developers take a little more seriously, like, after Last of Us sets this super high bar of how you marry story and gameplay without having to sacrifice, it is able to marry story and gameplay and still have, like, cutscenes, It's not this, like, because when a lot of people have talked about this kind of stuff in the past, like, stuff like Half-Life gets brought up where, it's because Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 1 are all, like, always from Gordon Freeman's perspective and all that kind of stuff, when it's like, Half-Life 1 and 2 have terrible, shitty fucking stories because they don't try to tell a story at all. Like, it's just like, and the format is not optimal for that. So it's like, but it's usually these, like, very heavily story-driven narrative games that have this ludonarrative dissonance because you have to have this gameplay element, and obviously, like, the story element is what you're really trying to push, and the gameplay element helps it, but it also gets in the way in a lot of places, and The Last of Us just completely, it just gets rid of it. Like,
that wall is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, it goes down to, there's so many other things I can say, like broad statements, where I think these are some of the best video game controls ever, some of the best cutscenes and gameplay ever, and it's because it's all one. It's like when you are, whether you're watching a cutscene or playing the game or doing some of the cover-based fighting stuff in the game, whatever you're doing in the game, it is furthering the story, the emotional arc, and the character arcs, and the thematic arcs. It's doing all of those at all times, virtually. And just the very act of playing, when you get into one of those environments and you have to move through and either kill or surpass all the enemies, whether they're infected or humans. It's all about, those moments are putting you in the shoes of Joel, or later in the game, Ellie, and it's about forging that connection with that character and understanding the life you're living. And so the survival aspects of the game, the horror of this post-apocalyptic wasteland, is really conveyed through what you are doing, the actions you take as the character. And then the genius of the story is that in the last, I guess, couple acts of the game, you could call them, the winter and in the spring portions, you're implicit. You are made implicit in what's happened in the game, and it's fascinating, and it's what it gives it this incredible emotional heft. I think I described it to you when we first talked about the game after I finished it as, when I finished that game, I didn't know what to feel. It's like, emotionally, it's just, it breaks you, and it's because that ludonarrative dissonance is all but absent.
Yeah, in a type of game that it's usually so prominent. And like in Naughty Dog's like most famous game is that's the example you bring up as fucking Uncharted 2 of ludonarrative dissonance in video games, and it's just so fucking amazing that, because what happened at Naughty Dog is like, after Uncharted 2, they split off into two different teams. One of them, like the team that made The Last of Us is headed by Neil Druckmann, and I can't think, whatever. Like there was another, like the game director for The Last of Us. It was also worked on Uncharted 2, and so they split off to make The Last of Us, and then it's like it's like separate faction of the Naughty Dog team continued making Uncharted, and obviously made Uncharted 3, and are probably working on whatever the next Naughty Dog game is going to be on the PS4, which might be Uncharted 4. Who knows?
Yeah. So, I mean, Naughty Dog, that faction, the Last of Us team, has been working on this game for a long time.
Yeah, for like 3 years about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a long fucking time coming.
Yes.
I think it's certainly... like, this game was hyped like a motherfucker before it came out, and it is one of the very few times I think I've played something that is like, it completely 100%... It surpasses its hype. Because there's like no way... For me, like with my experience with this game, there's no way you could try to describe it, because it takes what sort of a lot of video games have done to just a completely different level.
It does, and that's actually an interesting point. My brother Thomas was around a lot of the time I was playing the game these last couple days, just sitting on the couch. Sometimes he was playing another game on his 3DS or something, and he got kind of invested in just what he had seen. And when I finished it, he asked me how it ended, and I explained it. And obviously the ending is very complex, because you can explain the literal details. Is that Joel, goes after the Fireflies at the end, saves Ellie, and they leave. But you can't describe the impact of that without playing it.
Yeah, the ending is one of the best parts of the whole thing.
But the ending starts being seeded throughout. I mean, to me, the most important turn in the game is the stuff in Winter with Ellie.
Yeah, Winter is my favorite part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That act is incredible.
When David, Nolan North,
a
round of applause. Shit. I mean, everyone.
Like, you could not do a completely like as for like drawing the comparisons of like Uncharted 2 to The Last of Us. There is no more different a role than Nathan fucking Drake in Uncharted 2, and then David, this like creepy fucking kind of pedophilic cannibal like leader of this faction of
who
people.
You understand.
Yeah, and who's like he's basically just fucking Joel if Joel had a thing for Ellie,
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just...
I mean,
like, it was so unbelievable, because I didn't even... Like, I kind of pride myself on being able to recognize voice actors. Like, there are several voice actors throughout the game that I were able to pick up. Like, my favorites were, among the random thugs, Sam Riegel, who does the new voice for Teddy from Persona 4 Arena and the Golden, and then Liam O'Brien, who's Akihiko from Persona 3. They make, like, recurring appearances as just, like, random thugs.
And I've noticed them, too,
It's a ton of fun, but it's like, Nolan North, I could not peg that. And so it's like, when I saw his name in the credits, I'm like, David, which guy was David? That was the dude in Winter. There's no way that guy was Nolan North. And I looked it up on Wikipedia, it's like, motherfucking Nolan North, dude.
Yeah.
That dude.
That struck me, too, because, I mean, he's great, and then I get to the end, and we will talk at length about Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson, because two of the all-time great vocal performances, games or otherwise.
Yeah, just performances, like, because it's performance capture.
Yes.
Like, they are playing the characters.
Yeah, and we'll talk about them in a little bit, but I loved watching the credits. I mean, for one, I love how they present credits in the intro and the end, that they're very cinematic, and they give real weight to everyone who worked on this game. Mm-hmm. And especially some of the voice acting stuff there. I love how you get through the list and it says, and Nolan North as David, and I was like, no way!
Yeah, because he does such a good job, like, it just doesn't, because you know that these guys and gals are super talented voice actors, and it's like, they obviously can do, like, dozens and dozens of voices, but it's like, Nolan North is so identifiable to me. Like, like, even when he does different voices, it's like, I can usually pick him out, because he's done so many voices, and it's like, I've never heard him give a performance like this before. Like, I didn't know he could be this fucking creepy.
But as I was saying, you have to play through that part and have the understanding of you having literally, with your hands on the controller, killed all these people, killed David's men, and understood that impact for what happens in the final portion of the game to have that emotional punch. Because you really have to make that turn where you can see Joel as crazy, and you can see your own actions as crazy and savage, and have that turned on you. And so, trying to explain this to my brother, it's like, he didn't quite get. I mean, he understood why I loved it, and I could articulate it, but he couldn't quite understand the emotional impact, obviously, because you can't unless you play the game.
Yeah.
And I'll say, you had heard a lot of the hype.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually heard very little about this game just because I don't necessarily read a lot of video game news. I really like just being surprised by games. So what I'd heard about The Last of Us had come entirely from you. I hadn't read any reviews or looked at anything, and that was a real pleasure, just taking this game home and knowing I'd never seen a trailer. Only thing I knew was on the front of the box, Joel and Ellie, I knew what they looked like, and that it involved a post-apocalyptic wasteland. But honestly...
And Troy Baker.
Yeah, and Troy Baker, because Troy Baker's one of my favorites.
Troy Baker's awesome.
Yep. And so, yeah, that was a real joy. But, I mean, what was your level of knowledge of it going into it?
I mean, I steered far away from any sort of story spoilers. Like, the most I knew was post-apocalyptic, like wasteland, like some type of zombie thing. I heard about the clickers somewhere, so I knew that like there was some weird like echolocation type enemy.
I'm gonna have PTSD from the clickers for the rest of my fucking life.
The fucking like when you're in the subway area and it's like there's just like 10 clickers down there and there's like 2 normal infected. Those 2 normal infected, fuck you. But anyways, I knew about the clickers.
You know what I did in that situation?
What did you do?
Is this a subway or is this the tunnel at the end of the game or the subway early on?
No, like near the beginning, you're still with Tess. And it's like that sort of like subway station. You know, you go underground and there's like 10 clickers like sort of scattered around.
Yeah, fuck that part. That's hard. I was going to say at the tunnel part at the end, it's a similar situation where there's just tons of clickers, and then in this one little like sub tunnel in the back, there's 3 normal infected. I burned them to death with my flamethrower.
I'm pretty sure I did the same thing. Yeah.
But anyway, So what were you saying?
Yeah, so it's like I knew like a normal amount without getting into any sort of deep story stuff. Like I think like the biggest exposure I had to the game was the E3 demo from I guess it would have been 2012. I don't know, either 2012 or 2011. It was actually interesting because because that E3 demo made such a huge impression on me that when I got to that point in the game where it's during summer. It's after you've like encountered the hunters and you're sort of like going into I think it's like a hotel it's basically like it's just like you go in through a window onto like probably like the 3rd floor of this hotel and kind of clear out that floor and then like when you're actually playing the game you proceed up the successive floors to get out. But like during that section like that is the fucking E3 demo. Like there were some things that were slightly different and like obviously like they like put it like here's this cool moment where Ellie does something so we can highlight her AI or something. But it was like holy, this is the fucking E3 demo. And I was so surprised when I hit that, because it's like, like Bioshock Infinite, its E3 demos, no, not in the game. Nowhere. Just like, not even a hint of them. Like, Halo 2. Nope. None of that E3 demo stuff was in Halo 2. So usually those E3 demos are not representative of the actual final game. So I was super impressed and was like, this one thing, like the thing that I really gravitated to, that I was like, I saw that E3 demo of The Last of Us and decided not to consume any more information about The Last of Us. That demo I saw a year ago made such a strong impression on me that I was like, when I got to that part, I was like, this is the fucking part. Like, so close that it was unbelievable, because that never happens in video games. It shows that these guys had such confidence in their game that it's like, and that they're going to fucking put, like, this section of the actual game in our fucking demo.
And that, if they had that section that clearly ready a year out, it shows that, they sat down to make this with a very clear vision.
Yeah.
Very clear execution style, and they just did a great job.
Yeah.
So, where do you want to take this discussion?
I guess let's just kind of just start at the beginning of the game, I guess.
I want to start there because I knew...
Awesome.
When I say I knew nothing about this, I didn't even know about like the time frame of it, that Joel had a daughter at all.
I didn't know the time frame. That's one of the best things about the game is that most of the game takes place 20 years into the apocalypse. That's fucking genius.
It's genius, and I want to say right up front, I feel this has the best opening to any game I have ever played.
Yeah.
That first half hour when you are in, the present day, apocalypse happens. I was saying I was sucked in is not fully indicative of what I felt playing that stretch, where it's immediately you get a sense for Troy Baker's performance as this character, who Joel is at this moment, that he's a good guy. He's just trying to get by. And he's got a very nice daughter, and you're in that house, and I love that. One of the things I love about the game throughout is that they really used the graphical power at hand to show you can really explore these environments.
Yeah, like every single environment is super packed with detail.
And so just going around that house as the little girl, and just having this feeling in the back of my head, it's like, I know something bad happens. please
Yeah,
God,
because
don't
I
let it
know
happen.
this is not the little girl on the cover of the game, so it's like, well, shit.
Yeah. And so you
God,
have to,
fuck, God damn it.
and it's so cruel but so crucial that they put you in her shoes right off the bat, because then when she gets killed, and it's very important to note that it's a human who kills her.
Yeah.
God, you feel that.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the end and having seen the apocalypse start firsthand and felt Joel's pain and understood all this and been introduced to Tommy also, who comes back and is important, it's incredible. And that is just hands down best video game opening I've ever seen, because that to me felt like that had like a similar level of impact to me as the ending to BioShock Infinite, and I've gone on record saying that's my favorite video game ending. So it's like that was like just a super powerful gaming experience just getting started with The Last of Us.
Yeah, and it definitely, because it immediately showcases, I think, one of the things that was particularly memorable about that sequence was when you get into the car and you're driving away. I love that you have, control over Sarah in the back of the car, and there's something just, so familiar about that of, the way they animate her, where you can, sort of, look around, and she sort of, moves around the back seat, looking out the windows, and you, see a burning house. You can just remember being a kid in the back seat of your car while your parents are driving, and they're talking about some shit that's adult shit that they don't really want you to hear, but they need to talk about it anyways. And you're just looking out at stuff going on outside the windows. Just so happens that this time it's really crazy shit.
Yes. And I mean, we should mention up front, one of the most impressive things is the fluidity between cutscene stuff and video game stuff.
Yeah.
Where sometimes you're not even aware you can move, and early on you have to get used to that. That it's oh, they were just moving, but now I'm moving her. Yeah. And so it's this really fluid style where, again, you feel like that character right off the bat, and then once you get to play as Joel, you feel like that character right off the bat. It's very, very fluid, and I think just. I love how much story they convey where you're just sort of walking around, and just that little bit of interaction sometimes makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and then there's just it immediately showcases the writing right off the bat, where it's just one of my favorite bits of dialogue in the whole game is when Sarah and Joel are talking, and she gives him the watch. Mm-hmm. That's sort of becomes a really subtle character thing for him throughout the game. And he asks, how the hell did you pay for this thing? And she says, oh, I've been dealing hard drugs. And it's oh, great, now you can help pay the mortgage. That little tiny exchange just drew so much about their relationship of Joel being this single father who has this kid who had to grow up a little bit too young, kind of. And it's that relationship, it was just so immediately perfectly well drawn that even though you only spend 5 minutes with Sarah when she gets shot and killed, it is still super impactful.
And you see, once you start spending time with Ellie, what he's seeing in her. Because you know what he saw in Sarah. And I think also just the atmosphere of this opening portion, the music is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the music grabs you right off the bat, and, just the general tone and atmosphere of these early scenes really draws you in. And then I also wanted to mention there's a nice little detail you can explore early on where you find the card she's going to give to her dad.
Yeah.
That also informs that relationship a lot. That's one of the things I love throughout is the little things you'll find that tell you about characters.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to the end and some of the voice recordings you hear from Marlene, things like that. They use that very well throughout. It never feels like a collectibles gimmick.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a reward to it beyond a trophy.
Mm-hmm. So. And it feels, even though it is a lot of those random messages you find still feel a little bit contrived. It's why would this dude write all this stuff here and this is conveniently left here on this desk or whatever. But it still feels better implemented than BioShock Infinite is just the most recent example, but most games do this where you have the audio logs. It's what the fuck are you people recording all this shit and just leaving it around everywhere? At least you can, people are writing handwritten notes and stuff because it's the fucking apocalypse. Sure, I could buy that in instances.
And in many cases, especially if it's a character they contextualize it in the plot very clearly.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about, a little detail about the game is when you do pick up the random side collectibles, most of the time Joel and Ellie will comment on what you've read. That's so, which is and it's a nice little thing where when they started doing that in the back of my head, I'm there's that type of gamer that's they would pick that piece of paper up and then just not read what was on it. And it's they probably have no clue what that dialogue is now referring to. He's the character's acknowledging that, hey, I picked up this piece of paper where this dude detailed the final seconds of his life or whatever. It's the characters acknowledge that they just read that because it's they read that, not just you, not just the player. It's Joel and Ellie are aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So poor Sarah gets gunned down by this police officer, military.
Yeah, it's the military cordon,
Yeah.
like, shit's going down, I'm gonna shoot people, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy hard.
Yeah.
Presentation is so great across this game. Those opening credits are fantastic. I love that they put Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson up front, that they have the major, names of the people at the studio in there.
Yeah.
It's a really nice opening sequence, and also shows gets you primed for that when we come back, we're going to be deep into the shit.
Yeah.
20 years later. And then, for a little while thereafter that, the game is slow, and it's intentionally slow.
Yeah, like, it's interesting because past that point, like, the game, it kind of does, like, a very movie thing in that it's kind of, it's kind of like the opening of Seven Samurai, where it's like, or not, like the sequence where they find Kanbei in Seven Samurai, like that thing of, we're going to start doing something that is basically irrelevant to the actual plot of the game, but you use it to introduce character stuff and just to set up the world. So it's like when you start off 20 years later, it's Joel and Tess dealing with this arms deal that is tangentially related to the thing with Ellie. It leads into the thing with Ellie, but it's basically like that arms deal. Like, I was hoping at the end of the game, like, Joel would be like, so where are my fucking guns? I've been doing this for a goddamn year. Give me some, I lost my girlfriend. I've been trucking this goddamn kid along with me. I had to watch Nolan North get brutalized. I want my goddamn guns. And then he gets his guns and just leaves. And that's the actual end of the game.
Or it's like he gets the guns and he and Ellie go just make this fort, and they just will kill anyone who comes, and he trains her in every weapon type.
That's just basically the game.
Yeah, I guess that is.
Except for the part where they just get a bunch of guns, but they get some guns, and he does that anyways.
Yes. So anyway, I'll admit, I had a little trouble getting into The Last of Us in those first couple hours, but I mean that as a compliment, actually, in the grand scheme of things, which is that once stuff starts happening, it is so challenging, so fast, so upfront. It's frustrating, but at the same time, once you come out on the other side of that and you start having the grasp on it, you realize immediately that was so important. Yeah. That I felt that frustration and that the game moved. And then actually the slow pace never bothered me. I really liked just being immersed in this world. But definitely there are some of the early challenges, like some of the first rooms you have to clear, for instance. Had a little trouble getting into it, but in the grand scheme of things, I really look back on those parts and love them, and if I were to play it again, I'd have a ton of fun with it. It's just,
for me, I didn't find those sections frustrating at all, because I found the game so immediately mechanically interesting that I was like...
And I did too.
I was so, just wanted to get into this, the combat seemed so interesting and well done to me that I was like, I want to...
And I guess...
I immediately just wanted to, dig into it.
Yeah, and I guess if I were to elaborate on that point, what I would say is, obviously for a while you don't really do any... fighting stuff. It's just kind of moving around, learning the simple mechanics, like how you find ladders and bridges and stuff, all the really immersive details like that, how you interact with the world. And then once you start doing the fights and stuff, I think when I say it felt like it had a little trouble getting into it, it's that it's a very, very complex control scheme.
Yeah,
to the point where at times it feels like you could really effectively do this on PC and have lots of buttons and be able to have that layout.
Maybe. Yeah.
But being doing it on the console controller, they had to really make every fucking button on that thing count.
Yeah.
And so it's really intense and immersive and tough to get a handle on. But I agree. I was really even in the parts where I was feeling a little frustrated, I was so interested in those mechanics and getting a handle on it. And again, once you have that handle on it, I think you appreciate everything that comes before. For me, at least, I appreciated all the stuff leading up to that so much. And I really do think, when we talk about controls later on, I do think these are probably my favorite console controls, at least for a third-person game ever. I fucking love them. I feel so at one with what's going on screen. Yeah,
I definitely think they did a lot of... I think one of the things they did really, that just ties into everything in terms of the mechanics of the game, in terms of the gunplay, is that it got so far away from what the Uncharted style of gunplay is, where it's you get an AK-47, it's got 30 rounds of the clip, it's an automatic weapon. I love that in The Last of Us you don't get an automatic weapon until the end of the game, where it's you can't even upgrade that assault rifle. It is just we are throwing a lot of shit at you, so we're going to throw you a little bit of a bone, and you get this assault rifle, and even then it's not that good.
And I never really used it. It never...
I spent all the ammo I had on that thing, but it's I think I spent all the ammo I had on that thing to kill the last dude I needed to kill, and I was okay, I'm out of everything.
That's actually...
Thank God I'm at the end of the game, because I'm running on a brick right now. I got a brick in my pocket, and that's it.
Yeah, really, what I think I used it for.
No,
most,
I had a brick and I had one revolver bullet that I used to kill the one scientist.
Yeah, what I used it most was I had used up everything except my assault rifle and my brick, and so at the end, when you go into the hospital room to save Ellie, I shot them all down with the assault rifle.
I was hoping you were going to say I beat the dude to death with the brick, like the guy who holds out a scalpel.
Actually,
like him just like start beating him to death.
No. I shot that guy, shot one of the two women, and then the last woman I was out of all ammo, so I beat her to death with the brick. I did do that.
Seems a bit excessive.
They're fucking trying to kill Ellie. Joel is insane at that point. It fits.
The brick might be going too far.
Joel
he would kill all those people, but he wouldn't go to the extent of like he would kill the people as long as it was just really simple to kill them by just shooting them. I don't think you'd go to the.
I was out of ammo.
I'm just going to beat you. But you didn't need to kill like all. You only needed to kill the one dude with the scalpel.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
Clearly.
Anyway, let's get back. We're getting off track a little bit here. But I really, in any case, the story portions early on are fascinating just to see. We don't usually see the apocalypse 20 years later.
Yeah.
And seeing that there is a society, it's ordered to a certain degree. Joel has an apartment, and it's really interesting to see. And
to be fair, he probably just killed whoever lived in that apartment. Is just living there.
Right, but it's a really interesting dynamic where you start at a place of relative peace.
Yeah. It's I think we should just go into this now of the whole setting of how they deal with the post-apocalypse, because it is this is my favorite zombie story. This is my
absolutely.
They have handled that concept better than anyone else has handled it, because largely because it's been handled so much before that it's their way of dealing with it is so fascinating and just so much more involving than just people come back from the dead and they bite you and you turn into a zombie. That's not that. And it's not just, hey, it's set right when the shit goes down. No, it's set 20 years after. You see it start, and then you see society's just gone. The society has been completely destroyed, but humanity's still basically fine. We're just living as normal fucking animals. We're not these, we rule the entire fucking planet anymore.
Yeah.
And then, on top of it, the main reason why it is my favorite fucking zombie thing ever is because these are no bullshit zombies. These zombies have, it's probably never going to actually happen, but they have a reasonable scientific basis for existing. They are not just some supernatural, they're not even fucking zombies. They are the infected, because they're not dead, or they don't come back from the dead. You don't get bit and then you die and then you're resurrected as a zombie. That's how it works in zombie stories. This is based on real fucking shit. It's the cordyceps fungus, which is an actual fungus that only infects insects now, but it'll infect an insect and it'll basically just use their bodies as nutrients and then sprout up. And the most famous strain of cordyceps infects ants and controls the ants, manipulates the hormones in their brains to get them to climb up on stems, grab onto the stem, then they sprout a big fungus thing out of the back of their fucking head over the course of a week, and then that shoots spores out over the rest of the ant colony. Basically, if it works, it kills all the fucking ants in the ant colony because they all become infected. So it's and sort of the premise for The Last of Us is that cordyceps virus has found some way to transfer to humans fucking swine flu or bird flu or AIDS did. And so now that this virulent strain of cordyceps now affects humans, it affects them in a way that's when you get infected, you go fucking crazy. In the cordyceps, you're you're they call them the runners, and you try to infect other people by just biting them and trying to transfer it that way, which is a reasonable thing for a life form to try to do. Is just, I'm going to transmit by fucking biting you, and it is this fungus is trying to make these people do that, and then as the fungus spreads, their fucking face basically explodes with a fungal outburst. That's what makes the clickers, who they no longer have eyes, so they move around by echolocation. And then as it progresses even further, they blow up, and then eventually they basically explode and shoot spores everywhere. And that's the primary way of it reproducing, is by humans inhaling spores. And so and all of that shit is just implied throughout the game. They don't say that. It's cordyceps. They say cordyceps, and then you just sort of see, okay, this is a normal dude. They kind of say, these guys have just been infected. They say, these clicker guys have been infected for a while, and these bloater guys have been infected for even longer. But it's you just have to pick up. It's there's this field of spores, and then there's this dead body with all these fungal sprouts sticking out of them. So it's clearly this was a bloater that exploded and has it just made this entire area uninhabitable, and they paint that so well and make that so visceral and obvious and like intellectually interesting that it's like, okay, like this is something I can buy into. This is a life form that has found a niche that can survive, that is exploiting our overpopulation of the planet. This makes sense. Like, I can buy this, and it is not supernatural zombie bullshit. And that makes it so much more compelling to me than, like, Dawn of the Dead or whatever, you know?
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I did not, sit down and reason it out as clearly as you just did. But I definitely picked up.
I have a thing for that kind of stuff. So.
Right, yeah, and it's definitely something where I definitely saw the the levels of the infected and where that comes from, and all of that this is a scientific basis, and that it is an important switch that these people are not dead. There is that constant question that I think the boy who kind of befriends Ellie at one point asks is, are they still in there? Mm-hmm. And that's something you wind up thinking about a lot. I think in the game. They're probably not.
No, they're not. They are technically dead.
Yeah,
they have no cognitive control.
Right. But it's
that kid's an idiot.
Well, it definitely adds a layer of
It's a good thing that kid died because he wasn't going to live for long anyways, even if he hadn't been infected then. Dumbass.
Anyway,
fucking they tried to leave me for dead.
I agree.
Fuck those guys.
I really hoped there would be like a little option when Joel's got the gun on him on the beach and like, can I kill this motherfucker? Because he's slowing us down.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. That being said, the scene where they
kill him and then we're going to eat him because we're going to fucking. We have to survive. No bullshit.
I know. You really get into that mindset playing the game. But anyway, you said that's why this is your favorite, zombie apocalypse kind of story. I'd say that. I'd go a step further. I'd say this and Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which have a lot of, it has some similarities to, are my two favorite apocalypse stories just ever, in terms of like post-apocalyptic at least. Because The Road is another great example of one that takes place significantly after whatever the inciting event was, and where you don't have a ton of details on the inciting event, and it's really about the human element of it. And this to me is like sort of, that's very much the literary height of that kind of story. This is the gaming height of that kind of, and you don't even have to delineate. Those are heights of that kind of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And absolutely. This is such a triumph for this subgenre that has become way overpopular. Yeah. I mean, I was enjoying The Last of Us so fucking much that I couldn't even muster up the enthusiasm to go see World War Z for review. I wound up giving it to another writer to go review. Because it's just like, I would much rather sit at home and play this really great zombie story than go see a really subpar Brad Pitt movie.
Well, you didn't see it, so how can you say that?
I have not seen a single, like, glowingly positive take on it. Just, it wasn't bad. It looked like it was going to be terrible.
Just because that's what other people are saying doesn't, lots of people really loved Man of Steel. I did not love Man of Steel. I'm not going by other people's opinion on that movie.
But Man of Steel was completely divisive. There was no unified agreeing. Anyway. This is off topic.
Yes.
Last of Us? Good. Anyway. So yes, definitely just this the way they do the post-apocalypse. And that, you start from this place of where you see a sort of kind of an ordered society or semi-ordered society Joel lives in.
Yeah, but you definitely see the sort of fascist underpinnings of in order to maintain this semblance of what we once recognized as being civilization, they have to have hey, we've got rations, and if you don't follow our rules, we will shoot you. And so Joel and Tess are smugglers and gun runners and shit like that.
But anyway, what I was going to say is that, over the course of the game, that's where you start from, but you see so many different sides of what humanity has become throughout this until, that's another very important point when we get to the ending and talking about it. How you interpret the ending and Joel's actions and Ellie's decisions and thoughts at the end very much relates to how you have seen what humanity has become over the course, and that you've seen humanity in a very multifaceted, three-dimensional way over the course of the game. It's, Last of Us is a very simple, literal plot overall. It's just they are moving to where they need to get to. But over the course of that, they are able to show you many, many different sides of this, 20 years later post-apocalyptic world. So, but where you start is really cool. You have, the curfews and stuff. So there's this general, and all the army you have to fight. So there is this general sense of, danger and dread to it right off the bat. Mm-hmm. The Fireflies are another group. They really do just explain to you through not just, dry exposition. It's while you're playing, you kind of hear about them and learn about them and get a sense for them.
I always like to think that the Fireflies were when the apocalypse happened, all these super fans of Firefly banded together, and it's and then over the course of those 20 years, their original message was we need to go find Joss Whedon and save Joss Whedon and prevent him from dying in the apocalypse because we are so obsessed with his shit. And so then they call themselves the Fireflies. But then over the course of because eventually Joss Whedon gets infected or whatever and he dies. And then over the course of like those 20 years, their message sort of weirdly evolves into like becoming this like ragtag liberation group or whatever it is that's fighting the fascist government and trying to find a cure.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's canon.
Yes.
I definitely read that in a note somewhere. The Cult of Joss Whedon.
Yes. Because you find a Firefly DVD box set.
Yeah.
At one point.
This just got like this blood, like this note in it written like blood.
Yes. So anyway, and in this early portion, as you said, you just kind of get into the smuggling things they're doing. They're just running this very simple, well, not simple, but it's simple in the plot terms, this gun running operation. And you have to, and that's kind of the thing that introduces you to the mechanics and stuff. And then over the course of things, you meet Ellie.
Yes, because she is being taken care of by Marlene from the Fireflies, and then she has been bitten at some point in the past.
It's a nice reveal, too, because I had no idea. I didn't know that was going to be part of it.
I had no idea why Joel ends up with Ellie, so it was, like, interesting that, like, she's been bitten at some point in the past, and it's clear that, like, there's, like, fungus shit sprouting out of her, but she's fine. Like, she's been bitten, but she's not infected, and they claim that it's been, like, 2 weeks or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's fucking bullshit. Like,
yeah.
Well,
it creates this immediate sense of tension that carries through for a fairly long time, actually, in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's... Because part of the thing is also, like... Eventually, obviously, like, when Joel has been with her for, like, a day, it's like, okay, yeah, you're not infected, but there's always, because how it gets revealed initially is that a soldier, like, almost discovers her, and so she attacks him, and so that becomes, like, a running thing of, like, don't let other people find out, like, this whole have a bite thing, because they will think you're infected and probably try to kill you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting, I mean, because it sort of ties into, particularly when it comes up at the ending, like, that's such a great narrative device of like, and it's one that it feels very cliche, but they play with it a lot, and so it's like they like play with the cliche of like, yeah, we have to bring you and like save humanity, and you're like you're the chosen one, you're our fucking Jesus or whatever, And
that's something that actually the game does consistently is take cliched elements of the post-apocalyptic narrative and make them feel very fresh and just do a very good job with them. I mean, the other one is the big scene, and this isn't just post-apocalyptic, this is something that happens a lot in fiction, is the scene where, Ellie runs off, Joel has to go after her, and then they make nice at the end, and that's when their relationship is strengthened.
You are treading on some mighty thin ice.
Yeah, but you don't think of it as cliche while you're playing that part, because they do it so well.
Yeah, because especially that fucking scene where they have to make up the dialogue and the performance there is so fucking good.
Yeah.
But, yeah, getting ahead of ourselves.
All right, so you get Ellie. Tess gets bit.
Yeah.
She's going to die. So are Joel and Tess lovers, if that's what we're meant to take from that?
Yeah, I mean, they have sex.
Right.
Like, calling them lovers sounds like a bit... They're not lovers.
Right. Like, they're like professional partners, and then when they need some sex, they...
Yeah. And I like how there is this sense that Tess is the one that kind of wears the pants in that relationship, because, like, when she is with you, she is the one sort of, like... And part of this is, like, a game design thing of, like, she's sort of, like, your tutorial person of, like, here's how you do all this shit. But it, like, is nicely framed in that, like, she's kind of the head of this gun-running operation. Like, she is, like, when you're walking through the streets, like, everyone's like, hey, what's up, Tess? Nobody's like, yo, Joel, what's going on? Probably because you probably don't want to try to hold a conversation with Joel. That would probably be a scary thing to try to do. But then also Tess, Tess just, like, shoots people in cold blood, like, multiple times. Like, she executes, like, the one dude who they're trying to get the guns from. Like, she is a really badass fucking character. And it's, like, it is one of the things that's, like, I'm, becoming more conscious of, like, specifically because, like, you just cannot get away from, like, the just, like, countless articles maligning the state of, like, women as presented in video games. It's just annoying me because it's, like, it's not women presented in video games. It's women presented in mainstream media. Movies have that problem. TV shows have the problem. Video games have the problem. Women are not well presented in general. Last of Us, very good use of, like, not just women, but, like, minorities, just, like homosexuals, like everything. Like, it's, like, doesn't fucking matter. It's the post-apocalypse. People who can't handle it are dead. The people who can handle it, doesn't matter who you are. You're someone who can handle it, so you're a badass.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I wish I saw a little more writing about that out there, because it should be, definitely noted.
Yeah, I've seen a few articles now since the game's been out for about a week, where like people are drawing attention to, hey, all the stuff that we've been complaining about, Last of Us is showing a very good way of how you deal with these things in this game without, like, because it never feels like The Last of Us is trying to, like, make a point of, like, girl power or something, because that's just as bad. It's just like, these are these characters.
Yeah, no, as you said, it's just this is a society where those things have stopped mattering.
Yeah.
They just don't matter, and it's very interesting in that way. But I was going to say, the other thing that you talked about, Tess being sort of the tutorial character here, but it's also, again, talking about the lack of ludonarrative dissonance, it's very important that this is where Joel starts, where we really get to know him early on here as someone who has lost all initiative, really. He's kind of just living his days out. You don't feel like he gets any pleasure out of life.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be doing anything other than just surviving, and not even surviving in a particularly proactive way, because he's letting Tess run a lot of that. Mm-hmm. He's just kind of filling time, marking time until, his time runs out. And that's so important to have that early on, because that's Joel's arc, is that he becomes incredibly proactive by the end to destructive degrees. So it's really interesting in that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, Tess dies. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty sad. I like Tess a lot.
I like Tess too, and obviously it's a thing that kicks Joel off. It's not like he has this incredible undying loyalty to her, but it is enough to push him into.
She was the person in his life. You kind of see that through the game, where it's like everybody has their partner throughout certain parts of the game, where it's like, and you find out later that before Tess, there might have been someone else, but before Tess there was Tommy, Joel's brother, that he sort of used him as his excuse to survive. So it's you see that theme throughout the game of hey, you living alone in the post-apocalypse, one would be hard, and two would just kind of suck. You need that companionship, even if it is this weird relationship that Joel and Tess have.
Right, it's finding something to live for.
Yeah.
It has to be something.
Yeah.
And so that kicks off into figuring out what you're going to do with Ellie, and I think that's when you decide you're going to take her to Tommy's, right?
Yeah, that's when you it's because that point of the game is just let's try to get to where the Fireflies are. Oh, the fuck, they're not here. Let's try to get to where the Fireflies are. Fuck, they're not here. Okay, we're going to go to Tommy's. He'll tell us where the Fireflies are. The Fireflies are over here. Let's go over there. Fucking motherfuckers, where the fuck did you guys go? It's not to say that that's a bad thing about the game, but when you because most of the game is just we just need to keep on moving so that we can see more of the world and give these characters time to grow off of each other.
It is the most video gamey plot element to it, but it's not a bad thing.
It's just you need a little bit of a carrot. It's because you can't. I don't know. It'd be weird if you started out the game and it was we have to go all the way to fucking Salt Lake City. If you started with that and you're in goddamn Boston, it's oh come on. You need a little bit of something that's okay. There's checkpoints along the way where it's well, okay, fuck, I guess we need to go to Colorado. Okay,
and a big portion of Colorado, which is cool.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, but so you start going to Tommy's, but first you have to go to your friend's, I forget his names.
I can't remember all the names, but
it's the really crazy guy who's got all the traps.
Yeah,
and that part,
that's awesome.
That part is a challenging part of the game, but a super fun one, because that's when you start to realize just how detailed this world is, where you're going down those city streets, and you can enter all these buildings and search for stuff, and I played it on hard, you played it on hard. Yeah. I don't know what it's like on normal or easy, but on hard, it's I love that they are always fucking with you. It's you can open this drawer. There's nothing in it, but you can open it.
Yeah. It's
very
you are
realistic.
constantly scrounging for supplies because you never have enough to handle the next situation. So
yeah. Thomas came in one time. He's "Oh, are you low on ammo?" It's I'm never high on ammo. Yeah. I'm always low on everything.
If you manage for even a second to have double-digit ammo for a single gun, you are riding high.
I know, it's great.
Oh my god! And then you get into a big fight, and it's oh, my ammo's gone again! I had more ammo than I ever had for my entirety of playing this game, and I spent all of it on one fight. How the fuck did that just happen?
I know, this is...
Fucking shit.
It is kind of funny. There's this one part later in the game. I forget exactly where it comes in. It's about at the halfway mark, but it's the encounter that took me the longest to complete, 2 fucking hours, just trying it over and over and over. But anyway, when I finally finished it, and the way I chose to do it was just to kill every motherfucker in the room in a way that they were all kind of in a pile, and I collected everything, and I had maxed everything. It was so weird. For a minute, I had I was fucking loaded.
Yeah.
And it was such a weird feeling.
And then just immediately all of it's gone. You're how the fuck did that just happen?
Because you always go into encounters with the mindset of okay, I'm going to be conservative.
Yeah, I'm going to use the least amount of stuff that I can. I'm going to beat people in the face with bricks as much as possible because I can find bricks everywhere.
Yeah,
bricks.
But it never really goes according to plan. There's always going to be some kink in it because, for one, no encounter, no matter how many times you try it, will go the same way twice.
Yeah, it's very sandboxy in that way of it's kind of Halo-ish in this all these AI are here and you have all these tools. all these tools. You don't have a whole lot of tools.
You have the tools you have.
Yeah, you have the tools that you've managed to scrounge together, and you got to find some way to either get sneak past them, or if you're me, just kill everybody. Sneaking past them's fools. Well, never leave someone on your ass. It's my rule.
Well, here's a question:
yeah.
I feel like the arc that I played in terms of my progression as the gamer in the game was that, and it mirrored Joel's arc to me, where early on I tried to be a little more sneaky, or I was always trying to be sneaky, but I tried to be a little less violent. I was just going through. I hated the violence in this game is so rough that I kind of hated doing it. It disturbed me. It was like I'm just trying to do the least amount of damage possible. Just want to get through here. All I'm trying to do is live. And eventually, it was like I would realize, okay, in this encounter, the easiest way is just to kill everyone. And I do it. I'm like, God, that hurt. I shouldn't have done that. But then the next one, I do it again. And by the end, it's like you never leave anyone alive because
it's like I was cognizant of the fact that like most of the encounters you could just sneak by. Never did.
Okay.
Like other than if it was like infected, because usually that like I'm not going to kill every single clicker because that's just a dumb thing to do. But if it's people, I never leave anybody on my ass because like I'm always paranoid that it's like if there's like another encounter just around this corner, that guy's back there, he could hear me come up. It's like no, I'm not going to take that risk. Like fuck all of these people. Just fuck all of them. They're all like I don't care. You're all dead. You're all terrible people. I'm a terrible person. It's no holds barred. Everybody dies if you get in my way.
And what was so interesting for me playing it was that's the point I got to, but it's not the point I started at, and I feel like that informed my understanding of the character, I guess.
I mean, for me, it was like a lot more interesting, particularly contrasting like two different things. Where at the very beginning of the game, the first time you shoot a gun, or at least I don't know if you would actually have to shoot a gun or not here, but the first time you get a gun and have an opportunity to shoot something, it's when you're exploring all the stuff with Tess and you haven't really gotten to a fight yet. And there's like a guy in this infected area where there's all these spores who's been like trapped under a bookcase, and so it's like presumably you can like probably leave him there. And I was like, but it's like there's this clear like, well, you could just shoot him. And so I was like, I'm just going to shoot him. Like Joel just felt like this guy who would just shoot him because he doesn't really care. Maybe it seems like the nice thing to do, but I'm just going to fucking kill this guy because he also could turn infected. And there's like then contrasting that with the end of the game where also I don't know if when you get into the room with Ellie and the doctors. I don't know if there's a way to get out of that without killing them. Like, I don't know. But when I went in there, it's like, I thought about it for like a split second, kind of like at the beginning of the game. It's like, seems like there's like a choice of what to do here. Should I kill these people or not? And then the guy like pulls his scalpel. It's like, kill him. But it's like that time, I killed him because it's like, I need to fucking save Ellie. So it's like, for me, it wasn't that I like went from not killing everybody to killing everybody. I went from killing everybody just because I didn't give a fuck to killing everybody because I kind of gave a fuck now.
Yeah. And I think either way you approach it, and I think these are both valid ways to play and interpret the game.
Mine is a more valid and better interpretation. But yes.
Anyway, but the point
more
is
in line with Troy Baker's like performance as Joel. I feel.
I disagree with that, but we'll talk about that later. In any
disagree
case,
with your disagreement.
Okay, yes, I know that's what a disagreement is, Sean.
Yeah, well, I'm making a fucking point. I'm disagreeing with your disagreeing.
Okay. Let me finish my point.
Okay.
Either way, the point here is that you are always thinking about the violent acts you commit, and that's what's important, is that, however you're intellectualizing it, you are. It's never mindless, like, haha, it's having fun shooting someone.
Yeah, it's not Gears of War.
Yeah. I mean, I have trouble using the word fun to describe Last of Us, because
fair.
Fun makes me think of Halo. Fun makes me think of Gears of War. Fun makes me think of Tetris. Fun does not make me think of beating a guy brutally to death with a brick and then feeling awful about it, even though he's a sprite in a game. It's like, yeah.
Oh, it's a bit more than a sprite.
No.
It's not. You're not playing in like 1-bit game.
No, I know. Sorry, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yes, I guess.
All right,
that'd be pretty fantastic if they were just like 8-bit Nintendo sprites, and it's like, but like full like polygon Joel just runs up and like is beating Mario to death with a brick.
I'd play that.
Yeah, so would I.
Someone mod that.
All right, but
anyway, yeah. So you get the one of the first big things you do once it's just you and Ellie is you're in that town, as we said. You meet your old friend guy, and you have to. This is an interesting part because you have to get a car, and he does not have a car at first. And this is the only part where the game threatens for a second, like, oh, is this going to become like a fetch quest kind of mission? But it's not at all.
Yeah, no, it's not like.
And
it's not like go over here and get like this engine part, and go over here and get some tires or something.
Yeah, I was worried for a split second, like, oh, is it going to become that? It absolutely does not, and it's better for it. But it's like, you have to get there. There's that part in the school, which was the height of my frustration. Because
because I know you had a specific difficulty with the bloater fight like that. I didn't have a problem with that other than when I came out of that fight. that was like the first time where it's like they give you so much shotgun ammo, where it's like I had like 14 shotgun shells. I spit like all of them on the bloater and like killed them with like my last shot. So it's like I didn't have a problem with that one, but there are definitely some really difficult like lots like where they intermingle clickers and a lot of like normal infected together, where they like
it's just. And you know, when I look at it holistically, that's far from being the most challenging encounter in the game. It's just that where it comes, I'm still, you know, you've only kind of recently had the full ropes off, where you have full access to everything. You're getting new guns and stuff. You have more
you're
than
like
just a pistol.
upgrading your stuff.
Yeah. So it really like it's tough, and it's also they're throwing more shit at you more dynamically, where you not only have the bloater, but you have people coming from behind you, rushing at you, and so just the way you work with space, that's the area where it's changing and getting more complex, and it was super like. The only time I've ever broken or come close to broken a controller in a game, I will confess to the podcast, was at this point in the game in Last of Us. I kind of broke our PS3 controller. It's fine now. There's electrical tape on it. It works. But, yeah, kind of broke it there. I slammed it against the table, and then it's really weird if you have a controller that's broken open because the vibrate kind of escapes, and it's really weird. And you have to, like, hold it clamped shut while you're playing, or else it doesn't feel right. Anyway, so... But yeah, so I got really frustrated there, but immediately afterwards, that's when I really started getting into 100%, oh my god, this is one of the best games, one of the best pieces of media I have ever consumed. Mm-hmm. But definitely, like, getting past that point of frustration into the point where, past that point, there was no challenge in the game that I would say, like, that I would use the term frustrated on. It was more like, these are fair challenges, even if it takes me 2 hours to beat this part, I'm enjoying it because the reward for finally doing it is so high because it feels like a fair challenge.
Yeah.
It's just one that you're going to have to take a while and think through it.
Yeah, like I think for me, the only part of the game I found especially frustrating was the area where you're in the subway terminal with like Tess and Ellie and there's like a bunch of clickers because the way I play a game like this, because this is basically a survival horror game, but like a very different kind of survival horror game, is I just hoard absolutely everything. And that's one of the reasons to play on hard, because it forces you to do that in a way that's a lot better than most survival horror games. But like when you're in that subway station area and it's like there are bunches of clickers everywhere and there's just like one or two just asshole normal infected that don't know are there because they're like in the corner being quiet, so it's like your listen mode thing, you can't see them. So it's like, but when you attract their attention, they attract the attention of like every fucking clicker in the room. So it's like I went through that area because there's like a like safe or something that you get a combination to. So like I went through that room like 5 times just trying to get the safe and then also get out because it was like the checkpoint was at the very beginning. That was like the one area where I kind of got frustrated at. But then after I came out of that, I was like, now I know how to deal with clickers. Like, because that encounter was so like stressful, and like I didn't get too frustrated because it's like the atmosphere was so palpable in that like area. That was like I just kind of like. I love just the tension of being in this room in like a very like horror movie kind of way. But yeah, like it's like that does kind of feel like there are several encounters like that where it's like they ramp up the difficulty for like specific encounters, but then when you come out of them, you feel like I know how to deal with something new now. Like I can deal with this kind of shit, and then they throw like a new wrench in for the next encounter.
Absolutely, and you know this is I think as for the subway part, that was not super challenging. I mean, it's a very hard part of the game, but I guess I didn't feel like that was not my height of frustration point. I really like that part.
I never broke a controller, though. I've never broken a controller.
Good. And it would have been, technically would have been worse for you because you would have been using my controller. So at least I broke my own controller. I didn't like break someone else's or something.
Yeah.
So thank you for not breaking my controller.
Don't worry about it.
All right.
Proceed to not break your controllers in the future.
That's really considerate of you.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I wanted to mention here, while we're talking about the gameplay side of it and stuff, and we'll just, mix it all in as we go through the story here. You talked about how like that part is such a great horror part of the game.
Yeah. This
is the scariest game I've ever played, I feel. I also feel like just as a horror experience, I've never, like, watching horror movies, gotten that feeling. Occasionally in some movies, we talked about it a little bit with the Evil Dead remake earlier this year, but like that genuine fear of horror that horror movies can at their best, depict, doesn't often hit me. In The Last of Us, I was constantly on edge. I became very aware while I was playing these encounters of my own breathing. I wound up like physically changing as I was playing the game. Just like I was kind of like breathing like Joel, just basically like very like kind of up and down, and just very like I was so immersed in it, and I think part of that is how immersive the controls feel, where you feel like you have complete control of this human being in those moments, and it's just so fluid. It just became like I would be like down on the ground. When I would go into the listening mode and I would look around for things, I would like stop breathing, like I would hold my breath and like be breathing very slowly or something, and looking around and getting very just creeped out. And there were parts where like then you get to a moment where like you feel like you're doing everything well, but then a clicker will come up and bite your neck off.
Yeah,
and it's like then the tension, the adrenaline rises, and I'm like my heart's racing and stuff. It's such an effectively made game, and the gameplay is so effective in that way. It constantly made me like. It had physical effects on me.
Yeah, definitely. And then you bring up, like, when the clicker bites you, reminds me, I love the way they do death in this game, where it's like every time you get killed, whether it's by, like, a sort of, like specifically animated thing, like, where the clickers kill you, it's like they, like, have that, like, sort of, like, note that's just, like, and then it just smashes to black. I love that. It's such a great, like, death effect, where it's like,
and then,
oh, Jesus.
And then in parts where you keep dying over and over again, you start feeling like this game is mocking me with that fucking sound. God damn you sound.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then there will also be that same level of adrenaline when you get through something. Like, you've killed everyone, or you're going to run through the room, or you get out, and it's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And the game is always paced to let you feel that. It's never, you clear a really difficult room, you move on a foot later, and it's another one. It's then you start exploring, you're looking at the environment.
Yeah, they pace the game so perfectly.
Yes.
It's like, it is something that, like, that I felt the same way about Bioshock Infinite, of like, thank you for making these games that are not just like combat encounter, combat encounter, combat encounter, combat encounter. It's like combat encounters and dialogues, like a cinematic, like you explore around, you do a little puzzle thing with the ladder, then you get another combat encounter that's very different, and it's like so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of quiet moments to counter out these just like intensely stressful combat scenarios.
I mean, that's one of the things I love about the game so much, is that there are these a real style of gameplay in the game is just looking around the environments and scrounging for stuff. And that's not just a little thing you do between fights. It's like half the game.
Especially if you're playing on hard, it's like you fucking need everything you get.
And that's great because
nothing goes to waste.
They also manage to. Those are times when you get to feel calm and you get to look around and you talk with Ellie and stuff and do some character stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as you go through those and you get deeper into those sections, they also start building the tension that way. Yeah. And you always feel like there's some parts where, even after you beat someone, and in the back of your mind, all right, they're not going to throw another thing at me right now, but what if?
You're constant, like, you eventually get on edge of, like, they could interrupt this quiet moment, like, whenever, and I could not be expecting it.
Particularly, there was one moment where we were in some suburbs, and I was just going through houses, and every time I went to a house, I would, like, crouch going in, use listening mode, look around, and be like, okay. And every time I went into another room, it was like just super cautious, because who the fuck knows what could be around that corner? Yeah, they could totally throw something at you, and sometimes they do. Like there's one where I think you're in the hotel or the mall or something, and you're climbing up the ladder, and you feel like this. I've climbed up a ladder before. This will be fine. And then a clicker comes out and just shoves you to the ground, and then Ellie has to kill him, and it's sad. Yeah, poor Ellie. But
like the clickers, I think, like, as long as
the clickers are so scary.
Still talking about game design elements, I think the clickers are so well designed, because it is a sort of a relatively common sort of gameplay thing of that you have this blind enemy that is attracted by sound in order to encourage like stealthy play. But it's like, I love that because the game already has this very like stealth is very important to the combat sequences. So it's like you already have the thing where Joel must have like the strongest thighs in the universe because he spends half his day just like fucking crouched, If
he's been doing it for 20 years, I bet he would.
Yeah, it's like he's got like his glutes are rock fucking hard, man. But yeah, like but you're crouched. But I love that the clickers, if you're crouched and you move like as fast as you can when you're crouched, the clickers can still hear you and like come get you. It's like you have to be especially so you have to like move the stick like halfway even while you're crouched because you have to be. When you get close to them, you have to be really slow.
Yeah, I played this whole game in 5.1 surround sound one way or another. It was we have a surround set up at my house, and then I also, for when it was like night and I didn't want to wake people up, I used my PlayStation 7.1 headphones. And those clicker sections through the 7.1 headphones fuck with you. Yeah, it is like I had to at certain points just take them off and play it like just with the sound in the room because it was like that's too much. They're just everywhere. They're clicking and it's like you just get freaked out.
Yeah, and then one of this from the like pure game design perspective, like the clicker is like one of, if not the only thing in a video game I've ever encountered that's a one-hit kill. Then I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a one-hit kill. Like I see it, that is not a bullshit thing to do in this game. Where it's generally I feel like one-hit kills are fucking bullshit. Don't put one-hit kill attacks in your game. Like, that's just... It always sucks. And this time it's like, no. Like, because, and it's like, and it feels fair because it's like, you can, you know, if you know what you're doing, a clicker should never find out where you are. But it's like, but it's that tension of like, if they find out where I am, I could be dead in a fucking second. And when they find you out, it's like, you just fucking run. Like, when a clicker first discovers you, don't try to fucking fight it. Just both ass out because if the second you shoot a gun, every other clicker is now all of a sudden coming after you too.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't even kill clickers at all until you get a shotgun, because that's the only time you can really put up a stand.
Yeah, if you've got, like, the pistols. Yeah, like, maybe, like, the bow and arrow can take them out okay, but even then they're really hard to hit because they sort of, like, twitch a lot.
And the bow and arrow is one of the weapons that takes a longer time to aim and move through.
Yeah, especially if you haven't upgraded it yet.
Yeah, and, but yes, like there's also parts where like in the back of your mind, all right, this clicker can't see me, so if I move by it here and I'm doing it slowly enough, I'll be okay. But that's just in theory. You're like you have to you're like it's so scary. Like those are the parts where it's like I stop breathing while I'm playing. It's like I'm just nudging that analog stick, moving along. I also want to say this is an interesting observation I made. I think they make very good use specifically of the eccentricities of the PS3 controller. Like those analog sticks, definitely the way you use them, like that feels unique to how those analog sticks are. And in most PS3 games, I kind of feel like they're a little too fidgety. Yeah, they're a little too big and whatnot. But they really work well here because there's so much range of motion you can do on those sticks. Yeah. And I feel the same way with like the horrible triggers on the PS3. They work for me though when you're doing stuff like running or using the listening mode. Kind of that physical resistance feels kind of physically right for those motions.
Yeah. And then also like as far as like the way the sticks work, this sort of goes into like the aiming in general in the game. Is that like kind of what I was talking about earlier with Uncharted, like the automatic weapons? How every single weapon in this game is like, it's semi-automatic and every single like shot is important. Makes it so that it's like, but also your aim is like swimmy, especially before you upgrade it. Like that reticle moves all around the screen, so it's like you can't be too precise. Like there's always this like margin for error. So it's like you kind of have to like set up an area where it's like, okay, I'm at a distinct advantage here, and I should be able to take this guy out. Okay, but there's always this like chance that you're going to fuck up. Like
there's this part. There are two major encounters in the hospital at the end. One where you're in a very big room that has multiple rooms to it, and then the last big encounter of the game where you have. It's even harder because there's more guys in full armor and stuff. Yeah. But it's a smaller space. But the bigger space one, that one is super fucking tough. In part because of that aiming kind of stuff, where sometimes all right, the only way I'm going to get through this is if I take that guy there out. I have this gun with a scope. I'll do that. But it swims a little bit, and he's got armor, so
and it takes just half a second to get into scope view. Like it's not like you just immediately zoom in. It's like and then kind of have to zoom in, and then you have to steady yourself. Yeah. So you can't just pop out of cover, zoom in immediately, and just headshot a dude. Right. If you try to do that, you will just get shot.
Absolutely. And I guess the way I wound up doing a lot of encounters like that, where I knew I'm going to need to take some guys out, is I would find a place where I could really fortify. Like I can defend this. I've got my shit hoarded. I'm ready. I can craft stuff if I need to, And I'm just going to, I will attract them here. Throw a brick. They come over, shoot him, another guy will come over, shoot him, throw another brick, shoot him. It's like, that was something I wound up doing several times.
Yeah, for me, the way, this is something interesting where a lot of the sort of the stealth action gameplay, sort of how you fight humans for me, is very kind of vaguely similar to Splinter Cell Conviction, which is sort of the black sheep of Splinter Cell games because it's not straight up stealth, it is stealth action. And I have a very similar playstyle that no other games do this thing where it's I think actually the Splinter Cell Conviction developers came up with this term that I now kind of have adopted for it, where it's Panther style play, where it's I'm the fucking predator. When I play these kinds of games, I am constantly on the move, using the stealth to my advantage to be able to strike from different vantage points, and then when I take out a dude, that can attract someone else coming over so that I can sneak around. And I was very, very fond of the chuck a brick in a dude's face, then run up and deck him with a 2x4. That was my favorite move. That or just beat someone to death with the brick. Yeah. Or the glass bottle works well for that too, because you get some glass in their eyes, and then you just oh, I've also got this machete. Fucking.
God, the machete and the axe and shit.
Yeah,
this game is violent.
Yeah.
So the eternal question of Last of Us.
Brick.
Bottle or brick? Okay.
It's brick. Like,
of course it's brick.
Like,
no
I mean, it's an interesting thing because, like...
No disrespect to the bottle.
Yeah, I mean, the bottle is there for if you want to be straight up stealthy, because it is much better at attracting enemies when you throw it in the environment. But the brick is a 3-hit kill, and so it like basically decreases your normal melee hit kill time by like 50% if you like have to quit when you do melee. And the aforementioned throw a brick in a dude's face, and then hit him in the face with like a lead pipe. Like that stun time is like a couple of seconds longer if it's the brick. So it's like, it's the brick.
Of course.
Come on, like when you pussy, like, oh, I'm gonna lure him over there, and then I'm gonna sneak through this door. Fuck that! I'm gonna fucking bash his brains open with a brick because that guy's gonna come bite me in the ass if I don't kill him right now.
Yeah, I'm a brick fan. There are definitely times when I use the bottle because there are times when it's just smarter to in certain scenarios.
Yeah, especially when I was dealing like with infected because it attracts like clickers a lot easier. But yeah.
So as long as we're talking about sort of the gameplay side of it here,
sure.
I want to tell like the story of the moment when I felt like I made the turn into being violent. And so this is when we are. Well, you know what? Let's catch up to the story.
Okay,
I'll tell it then.
Yeah, because we've been doing.
We're close, but
gameplay stuff for a while.
All right. Well, we're in the part where you get your car, and then that's when you kind of have the first big. It's not a big time jump yet, but you drive to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And then in Pittsburgh, you start seeing the dark side of humanity.
Yeah, that's when you run into the hunters. Like, there's the whole sequence where you drive into Pittsburgh.
That stuff is intense.
Yeah, and there's the guy, like, this is one of my favorite encounters in the whole game, because it's like, the cutscene is like the dude standing out there, and he's like, pretends he's hurt, and I was like, what did you do to stop that guy? It's like, that guy ain't hurt. And then, like, the truck comes and knocks you into, like, this liquor store. That, like, encounter in the liquor store is one of my favorite fights in the whole game.
It is, for me too.
Because it's like, because you had been fighting infected for so long, and had gotten all these tools, like the bow and arrow and the shotgun and stuff, and, like, a bunch of upgrades, since the last time you fought humans, because that was, like, back when Tess was still around with you. And so it's like, now that you're fighting, like, the hunters, the human dudes again, it's like, okay, now, like, I have all these new tools at my advantage to use against these, like, these far more intelligent style enemies.
Oh, and this is an encounter where you absolutely have to kill everyone because you just can't get out of it otherwise.
Yeah, I think you literally do need to. You have to kill everyone to proceed.
And last time in the game you fought humans, it was the army, and you really can't fight a lot of those guys.
Yeah, because they are armored up, like at the beginning of the game.
So that's
hard to fight.
In fact, that's the part of the game where they are really teaching you how to be stealthy because you can't just expect to kill them all or fight.
I killed them. I fucking sleeper held those dudes and snapped their necks. Like, don't use bullets against them. This is one of like the weird complaints I've heard like online where people comparing it with Uncharted, because this is one of the biggest problems that the Uncharted games had, where that enemies were like bullet sponges. Like you'd have to shoot dudes like 10 times with an AK-47 to take them down. There are some people complaining about that with The Last of Us. I'm like, dude, that's because you're trying to kill a guy with full body armor with your fucking revolver.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things because it's funny, because one of the things about The Last of Us that I think it does really good is that if it's just a normal dude, like the hunters, they go down in like 2 shots with a normal gun. And it's like, if it's a shotgun, 1 shot and they're dead. Like it's...
Hunting rifle later on, same
thing. Yeah, hunting rifle, down. Like, bow and arrow, 1-hit kill. Like almost every single enemy in the game, except for the clearly obvious, these are guys with like big fucking helmets and black like Kevlar suits. Those dudes, you can't kill those guys with a revolver. But even then, if you have like a hunting rifle or like the Magnum or something, you take them down.
What's the part where you're in the hotel? When does that come in the game?
That's this hunter section. That's like that thing near the end of the hunter section.
Yeah, well, anyway, in the hunter section, there's a part where you talk about, you just getting all the guys in the sleeper hold. There's a super hilarious thing for me that happened. I could never replicate this scenario, the specifics of it, but you're in the hotel. I think it's the top floor. It's kind of the final encounter with these guys. And so you're in there's this one little room that I wound up kind of being in, and because there was this guy coming, I'm like, okay, I'll take this guy out, then maybe I'll move up. And so I take the guy out, and immediately I guess someone kind of half-spotted us and comes in, so I'm like, oh shit, and there's a little crate, so I move behind the crate, he comes in, I do the same thing on top of the guy's body, and that goes down. And then another guy comes in, and I realize, oh, this is going to be fun. So I wind up doing it to that guy too, and then I throw a bottle or something to get another person over, and just... I did that to everybody on the floor. Just they came over to the spot, I strangled them, and it felt super cheap, and it was like, again, it's not something that would happen ever again if I tried to do the game again. But
I mean, I had one like that where it was actually it wasn't in the same spot, but it was in a similar area of the game where it's just like, I think it was actually in the hotel, but it was like one of the earlier floors on the hotel where it's like I got a dude in like the bathroom, and I didn't sleeper hold the first guy. That was one of the dudes who threw a brick in his face and then hit him in the head with a lead pipe. And then that attracted another guy, so I kind of like hid behind the bed, then jumped over, sleeper held that dude, but he was like a good like 3 feet from the other guy I just killed, and it's like that kept on happening where I left this like trail of bodies outside the bedroom, like leading out into the hallway. So like that happened to me one time too. In
Yeah.
a really kind of funny, dumb way.
All right, so this is the portion in Pittsburgh with all the hunter guys. I don't remember all the story stuff that happens here. Is this where you meet the brother and son?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because this
is where you're trying to get to the Gold Bridge.
Yeah, because summer is sort of like split up into two halves, where it's like the first half is the like you're with Tess and all that stuff, and then the second half is Pittsburgh.
Okay. Yeah, and the Pittsburgh stuff is all really good. And this is where you meet the brother and son. I forget what their names are.
It's like Sam and something else. I don't remember.
Yeah. Let's look. I'm looking that up here.
Yeah, but it's.
So you what?
Nothing like what? Did you find them?
I can't find them yet, but I'll keep looking. You talk about this portion. What did you think of those characters?
I really like them because they're the first
nice.
The first nice human characters you've really seen, or at least they seem nice. I mean, they are nice. Like they there's like that one point where they could have tried to help you out, but they probably would have died, and so they kind of left you and Ellie. But then they come back and they're like, "Hey, sorry, but I mean, come on, like you would have done that too. Let's not be crazy here."
And I like that they put that on you right there. And it's as much as I hate those people for doing that to you, I agree with their point. It's
it's like they die. Like if they didn't, I would have killed them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I really like those characters. I also really like this section of the game. It has one of my favorite encounters, like near the end of it, with the sniper nest and like trying to work your way up to that sniper at like the end of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's really fucking crazy section of the game.
That section is so tough but so rewarding.
Yeah.
It's really one where you feel like that's one of the ones where you just feel so overwhelmed and undergunned because I don't know about you, but I entered that portion very low on health. Very low on ammunition and stuff, and it was just like I had to start taking out dudes just to get stuff, and then you had to go through all the houses to find things. And you're kind of scrounging and fighting on the fly in that section because all those houses are fully explorable.
Yeah, that was like the cool thing about that encounter is like you're like at this whole neighborhood, and at the far end of the neighborhood there's like a house looking out like at the road, and there's a sniper at the like a top window that can like see all of it. And so you have to like make your way down like this like fucking like block, basically fighting your way through dudes just to get to the sniper. And then once you do, you take out the sniper, and then you have like the one sort of there's kind of an earlier section with the trap where it's like you kind of have this more scripted-y gameplay sequence.
Yeah,
that I was fine with.
All right, so these characters' names are Henry, who's the older brother, and Sam, who's the younger brother.
Sam.
And so this is the story I wanted to tell.
Okay.
Is before you get to the neighborhood, because that's the last part with them, right?
Yeah, that's at the very end.
But before that, you once you get out of the water with Joel and Ellie, you have to go through the sewers. And the sewers, that's actually a really fun part of the game.
Yeah, where you see there's like that makeshift society that got built up, but you keep on finding these notes by the Ish, who like, it's Ishmael, because he's like the dude on the boat. And you also have like a great conversation with Ellie. It's one of my favorite conversations when you're on the boat, and she's like, so did like everybody have boats? And Joel's like, yeah, I had like a $500,000 yacht. Really? No. Sarcasm. Making progress.
Yes.
Like those there's so many just great exchanges between those two characters.
Absolutely. But anyway, one of the parts in the sewer, it's the hardest portion of the sewer part, but it's where you get separated, and Joel, you are with Sam, the kid.
Yeah.
And you it's right after you get separated, and so you have this, God, I will never forget what this area looks like, because I spent about 2 hours on it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so you have this little gate, and if you go out of the gate, then there's this hall, and what makes it so tough is that it's a pretty long walk before you get any cover.
Yeah.
And there are clickers everywhere, there's infected everywhere, there's a ton of people there, and I tried this encounter every different way imaginable. First I tried fighting, and then I realized it's tough to fight a lot of these clickers when there's these other guys around. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm going to have to isolate them. Try to isolate them didn't quite work. Tried to sneak past. You really can't sneak past. There's too many people. You have to fight at least a little bit. And so finally the strategy I started developing was at the start, you've got this little gate, and if you go out of the gate, there's some stuff you should pick up, some gears, some explosive. You can actually make a bomb, I think, or a Molotov or something. Yeah. Maybe a shiv. So you get your stuff, but if you run out there and make noise, 2 clickers will come. And that's great, because you just get the handheld shotgun thing.
Yeah.
Shorty.
Yeah.
And I also had some ammo in my regular shotgun. So I get Shorty, and I run out, I come back, and I'm behind the gate, and I'm waiting for the clickers to come, and when they start to run, that's when I shoot, they're dead. And it's like, okay, 2 down. And I'm like, that's a start. And that's what I started doing every time, was make sure those two are out of the way, because those are the two main clickers that will fuck you up otherwise. And then I wound up developing the strategy where, I forget exactly the specifics, but somehow, if I moved past a little bit like that, I could get other people to start coming, and I wound up just shooting everybody, and I had enough ammo, and I was just switching guns all over the place and using bricks and all sorts of stuff, where when I finally beat it, I didn't even quite comprehend that I had beaten it, because I wound up fighting kind of all the zombies in a very quick progression, where when I was done, everyone was dead and just in a pile in front of me, and that's the moment where I switched, and it's like, it is more effective just to kill them all.
Yeah.
That is what I have to do, because now you know what I can do? I can explore to my heart's fucking content in this room.
Exactly. That's what also was one of the main reasons that killed everybody. Is just like, I'm not... Because if you just like sneak through this area, you're probably going to miss half the supplies. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Fuck that. I'm going to kill all these motherfuckers and then take all their stuff.
So yeah, it was so surreal too, because literally I killed them all in that hallway without ever using cover or anything. It was just like...
Yeah, because they're infected, they don't shoot, so you don't really need cover at, like, once your cover's been blown. Yeah, like, I had a very... Like, it wasn't quite as hard for me, like, but I definitely... That was one of the harder encounters of the game, because it's like...
You just don't know how to approach it.
Yeah, there's no... Because it's like... They're probably, like, if you are really good, there has to be a way to sneak through that area. It's not like you literally have to kill everybody to progress.
I came
but
very
it's
close
so
once.
hard to move through because there are so many of the runner infected that can see you that it's like, it is so hard to move through there without them noticing. So that, I had, like, a bit... Because I tried to sneak through, or at least kill as many of them stealthily as I could, but then it's like, you end up being too far out, and then you just kind of get surrounded. So I had a similar thing where it's like, I just decided, no, fuck it. And I remember I had, like, 2 nail bombs that I killed, like, 2 dudes really stealthily that were, like, kind of the closest ones. And I set up a nail bomb at, like, the 2 sort of, like, main entrances that they could get at you towards, like, that gate area.
I did something
backed
similar.
up and, like, shot, like, 1 dude. Everyone started coming. And then just, like, at the end, there was just, like, this pile of gore in front of me. It was like, I have just killed, like, 15 zombies. It's like, I have nothing left, but fuck those guys.
It was definitely like, how I finally did it in the end was just making sure I knew the exact progression of guns I needed, made sure everything was ammoed up, made sure I had the nail bomb placed right there, because that's where they were going to come through. Yeah. Those nail bombs are awesome and terrible.
Yeah. Actually, I remember, like, the thing, because I had not realized up to this point that a Molotov cocktail will kill a clicker. It was like, that was the last thing that was like, I was like on my last straw in that encounter where it's like I had nothing left and there was a clicker coming at me. I'm like, oh, I've got this fucking Molotov cocktail. And it's like, I just switched to it really quick, threw it because I didn't think it would kill the clicker because those clickers are fucking hard to kill. It's like, nope, the dude lit up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I figured that one out.
Good.
I figured that one out pretty early on, and it's fun.
Yeah. Like it was just like, since the Molotov cocktail ingredients are the same ones you use for med kits, it was like, I never wanted to waste a Molotov cocktail, so it's like I never I never even thought to experiment like throwing that at a clicker.
I very rarely made them too, because as you said, they're the same as med kits. So anyway, once you get through this whole part, obviously near the end, I'm looking at the IMDb page. Mm-hmm. The actress who plays Tess is Annie Wershing from the final seasons of 24.
Huh.
I don't think you ever got that far in 24 when you watched it, but she's one of the main characters. So. Anyway, it was actually that was something when I was watching the credits. I just saw a bunch of names I recognized from different things. It was kind of fun. Yeah. But anyway,
like Laura Bailey was in there. I could not hear Laura Bailey.
Yeah, I don't know.
I couldn't place her anywhere.
Yeah,
like she wasn't. I don't think a named character. Like she would have been like one of the random people.
Maybe it's just like Laura Bailey has like a contract with the gaming industry. She has to have her name on every game.
Everything. Yeah.
Anyway, so in any case, you get through this part and you have the conversation. There's a very nice cutscene where you and the brothers Henry and Sam, you're all kind of calm, you're in the house, and Sam and Ellie have a really nice little conversation, but something's wrong with Sam, and you see he's infected, and you're like, oh god. And you have that's the first of those moments in that game where you're just like, oh god, shit's gonna happen. And that becomes a very common feeling from that point out, where you realize before the shit actually goes down that this is gonna get really bad very soon.
Yeah.
And so then there's the very sad cutscene where the kid comes out, he's infected, he gets shot, the brother shoots himself, and I love where they choose to cut.
Yeah.
Where it's just in the midst of the chaos.
Like because that's like one of the areas where you take because it's a zombie thing. There has to be the part where someone in the group of survivors gets infected. But I love what they do here is it's like he gets infected, like he gets shot, and it's also a very common thing of like the survivor whose family member dies and he can't deal with it, so he kills himself. Like that is also a very common zombie thing. So it's like that happens. Henry shoots himself, but then they cut it to several months later. To it being the fall, to the point where it's like you spend half the game in summer that you that by the time when it cut to fall, I was like, oh wait, shit, right? Like at the beginning of the section, it said summer, and I had completely forgotten about that.
I forgot about it too. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also, because they do this several times in the more violent cinematics, where specifically where they cut, I love is that, like, traditionally how you would edit that scene is that you cut to black on the gunshot, and you don't see anything happen. It's just like bam, and it's black because that's very dramatic. It's like, oh, what actually happened? Like, your imagination sort of fills in. This here, it's like fucking no. Like, you see what happens. He shoots himself in the head, and then it quickly cuts to Joel, and you see Joel just like, it's the only time it's like fucking like 5 frames, and it's the only time in the entire game that like you kind of see Joel being like that like expression on his face where it's like he's like legitimately like shocked and like sort of emotionally distraught. 'Cause it's like this dude just did like the one thing that Joel could never fucking do, which is like kill yourself, because Joel's like entire thing is I survive, like no matter fucking what, I survive, and I love that. I love that it's like, you don't cut on the act of violence, like that's not the dramatic, like, bam, gunshot, like that's where you cut, and it's like, no, you cut on the reaction to the violence, because that's the significant part, is like how that affects the character you really care about. And what that was like is such a brilliant, quick little touch that they did.
It's fantastic, and it leaves you just so breathless, because you're imagining, not only are you affected by that, the immediacy of that, but having that little cut to Joel makes you start thinking immediately about what they must have gone through in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah.
And how Joel must have had to talk Ellie down, and the emotional, they would have been so distraught for at least a couple of days.
Yeah.
And that now we're, several months later, and it's a great way they do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, like I was saying, like with you cut to black on the gunshot and leave like the violence, like his head exploding to your imagination, because that makes it worse. I like what they do here is they leave like all of the aftermath of that event, because it's months later. Like normally in this kind of thing, that would be like you cut and it's like a couple of hours later. It's like, no, like you're like detached from these characters. Like they went from Pittsburgh to Colorado in in that like time span. So it's like, it's something that then happens like 2 other times in the game, because it's got like the whole season thing going on. But it's like, that's such a, because you don't remember that's kind of, you don't really know that's what they're going for yet. So this, when it happens, it's all the more shocking, because you're like, what the fuck's going on? Like, this game all of a sudden is taking place over a much greater expanse of time than I was anticipating it was going to. Like, I thought it was going to be take place over the course of a week. No, this takes place over the course of a fucking year.
Yes. They do not cut to Colorado yet. They go to Wyoming for Tommy.
Well, Wyoming's basically fucking Colorado. Come on.
But there is
for all people who don't live in Colorado or Wyoming, Wyoming is Colorado. Colorado is Wyoming.
Okay. To be fair though, there is another time cut where they do go to Colorado.
Yeah, because they go to the college. But like I said,
okay.
Colorado's Wyoming. Yeah. Wyoming's Colorado.
This part with Tommy I really like, because while there is, there's an attack on the base, and then you do have to go fight the guys and save Ellie.
Yeah.
You don't have to save her, but you have to.
Yeah, you don't have to save her at all. You just have to go talk to her, and then you fight dudes.
But definitely, it doesn't feel like action is the focus of this section at all. It's about reconnecting with Tommy, doing a lot of character beats, and this is the section where Joel and Ellie's relationship is solidified.
Yeah.
And it's a really great stretch of the game. And it's also when you start to see these alternatives to what we've seen before of human society, where what Tommy has is obviously very healthy, the society they have. They're trying to find electricity. No one seems to be completely militant in their treatment of one another.
Yeah, they've like Tommy has left the Fireflies at this point, so it's like this group he's with, they don't give a fuck about finding the cure. It's like, whatever, we're just going to
survive and hopefully be happy.
Live off the fat of the land.
Yeah. And it's a really neat part, because you definitely, and it's that moment you also have to have in stories like this, where Joel and Ellie are presented with a choice where they could make
let's just stop.
Yeah,
let's just stay here.
They could make such happy lives for themselves there. And obviously it's very important that they choose to move on.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that alternative, and that there is, even in this post-apocalyptic environment, there are communities that are happy and are functional. It's a really cool part. I actually like the gameplay in this part a whole lot. And
this is where you get the axe for the first time. Like they start opening up the more brutal melee weapons. You're like, oh fucking Jesus.
Yeah, the violence in this game hits you.
Yeah, and it's just because again, summer is half the game. So this is the halfway point of the game, basically. So it's all of a sudden they introduce this brand new weapon that is this is more brutal than anything else I've used before. And I've been hitting dudes with fucking 2x4s that I duct tape scissors to.
But it's also perfectly paced, where I feel like when you get that axe, you need a melee weapon that can kill someone that fucking fast at that point, because you're getting so many more enemies and it's so much more hectic. There's less cover, there's less ability to just hide and sneak past it. Sometimes you just miss someone, they come behind you, you need to just stick an axe in their neck, but you still feel the impact of the violence. I don't ever feel like this is something Joel, is not hit by in some way or another. It's like, he fucking hit a guy with an axe. And we didn't mention, one of the things I love throughout, and it doesn't happen in this portion, but I love that Ellie always reacts to the violence you commit. That really matters. I think that really matters to the game.
And there's just, one of the great things is, like, there's so many voice samples of that. So it's just like, because every once in a while it's just like, like you throw a brick in a dude's face and then hit him in the face with an axe.
Yeah.
So just for some overkill. And then you just hear Ellie just go, fuck Joel.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I love that. And I love...
Maybe I went a little overboard there. You might be right.
And I also wound up a lot of the time... when I would do something or something would happen in a cutscene, I myself would say stuff like Jesus or something, and then Joel would say that.
Yeah.
That's like I would often be in alignment with Joel on the verbal exclamation I was making.
Like, just, fuck.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, but anyway,
God.
This is also a section where you get a horse for the first time.
Yeah.
The horse controls were, not Red Dead Redemption level, but very good, and that was impressive.
And to be fair, you're on the horse for 30 minutes.
That's what's impressive about it, is that it didn't need to be very well done, but it is
very well done. It is kind of a surprising moment, because again, it's just like, because that's just something you don't usually see in video games anymore, is like this one weird random just thing, it's like, you just get a horse for little tiny bits of the game, just kind of riding a horse around the town. Like, there's no horse combat or anything, but it's like...
Yeah. But it's very intuitive, they don't even need to put controls on screen, you just get it.
Yeah.
And it's fun, and it works very well. And then there's let's get back to story and talking about that here. You wanted to talk about the scene where Joel and Ellie reunite.
Yeah, there's two scenes in this section I particularly want to talk about. Like, the first one is because they end up at Tommy's camp where they're at the power plant, and then Joel has this one-on-one with Tommy.
It's great.
I love that scene so much just because it's like, this gives you this really brief hint, because it's the only hint you really get of what Joel did in that 20-year period. And it's just he has this brief conversation with his brother, where his brother's sort of getting really upset with him because Joel's just trying to shove Ellie off onto him. And so, they start arguing, and Joel, yells, you survived because of me! And then, they get into this whole, I have fucking nightmares! I was terrified! You practically ruined my goddamn life! I wish I had been killed, basically, is what he says. And then that's when you realize it's oh, shit, that's Joel went off the register pretty fucking quickly, is what it sounds like. Because after his daughter died, it sounds he took his brother under his wing, and it's he did whatever he thought was necessary to survive, even if that psychologically scarred and terrified his little brother.
Yeah, it's so interesting because your interpretation of Joel changes so dynamically as you play along.
Yeah.
I feel like, because my initial reaction is that, in the context he's in, Joel is not a bad guy, he's just trying to get by.
Yeah.
We start getting hints that he's done a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, he's because there's even stuff with the hunters where Ellie asks Joel after that whole thing where they get ambushed, how did you recognize that was an ambush? It's I've been on both sides of it. And it's just you get those little hints of he's not just a good guy in a bad situation, he is a guy making a bad situation worse for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because he's very, very angry.
Yeah, it's just your interpretation of Joel, as I said, is very dynamic in that way, and I that's what I appreciate so much about the character.
Yeah.
And you're never quite sure how you should judge him, or if you should judge him at all, because how do you gauge morality in this situation?
Yeah.
It's so tough, and it gets so much tougher as the game moves along. We're not even into the thick of it yet.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting in that way.
Yeah.
So it's that scene with Tommy, and then what's the other scene?
And then you end up, Ellie runs away because she realizes, Joel's just going to shove me off onto his little brother, and I don't want to be with Tommy. Tommy's an asshole. Tommy seems like a nice guy, but he's probably actually an asshole. So she rides away, and you have to chase after her on the horse, and you get into the house, and then you have this conversation. And I think it's really interesting that this is the point in the game where they bring up Sarah. Because since the audience knows, and obviously Joel knows, that Joel had a daughter, and his daughter died a very tragic, traumatic death. And that affected him, clearly. And it's you are aware of that, and at some point Ellie has to. It would be crazy if, at no point in the course of the story does Ellie, the surrogate daughter figure, not discover that her surrogate father figure had an actual daughter who died. And you expect, or at least I expect that, because the traditional thing to do is, that would be at the very end of the game, and that would that would tear them apart or something or whatever, and it's like, oh, they actually come together because it's like, no, you are my daughter or whatever. It's like that's how you expect that scene to play out, like near the very, very end of the story. And this comes in again, like a little bit past the halfway point. Like you still got like a good 8 hours of the game left to play, and Ellie like heard it from Tommy's wife or whatever, and like they actually have this like serious conversation. And I love this conversation so much where like Ellie is like actually just like there's no like nobody goes into huge hysterics, you know. And it's one of the things I love about this game in general. Nobody just like breaks down sobbing just like over like this like just because it's all so overwhelming or whatever. Like everything's very understated. And the scene of where Ellie's like trying to tell Joel why they need to be together, it's like it's these two people who are shitty at communicating, legitimately trying to communicate with one another. It's not just like...
And the breaking moment is him, you know, telling her, "I'm not your father, you're not my daughter."
Yeah.
And it's a very simple exclamation.
Yeah, and it's like, and the line in particular, like the whole delivery comes from Ellie that like just like really affected me, where she's like explaining like everybody I have ever cared about has died or left me, and then she's like, everybody except for fucking you, and she sort of shoves him, and the way Ashley Johnson just like plays that scene, that moment, it's just like, it makes you remember that's like Ellie's a teenager still, like even though she's obviously like seems a lot more mature in a lot of situations because she lives in the fucking post-apocalypse, like this is a situation where she's like, I need to like, we need to talk, and I don't know how to talk because I'm a fucking teenager, but have like this actual real like sort of like physical thing. I don't know. It's really hard to describe it. Like that conversation is just like, it feels like a conversation, and I love that where it's like, this is not an actory, writery thing. It's just two people fucking talking, and that is the hardest thing to do in writing and acting. It's just people talking.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I equally love the scene where Joel kind of relents and chooses to take her along and leave the camp, because I love just how underplayed everything he says to Tommy there is. He's really he's kind of speaking in between the lines. It's like what he's actually saying is not all that important. Tommy and Ellie get it, what he's just implying, you know, and what he's chosen to do.
And I love that they don't have, because what happens in that sequence of events is like you have the big argument that like sort of ends with Joel saying like, you're not my daughter and I sure as hell am not your dad, and then they get interrupted because some bandits come up, and so you don't get the moment where you don't see the moment where Joel decides he's going to actually stay with Ellie. Like that happens at some point in the gameplay of like you like fighting those guys and then riding back on the horse. And so it's like, I like that moment is just like kind of actually up to the player of like, yeah, no, like fucking stay with Ellie. Because one, if we don't, like, what are we going to do for the rest of the game? I certainly don't want this game to end anytime soon. It's like, two, like, don't be a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Ellie's pretty cool. Let's get her some more comic books.
I like the comic books.
I like them too.
I kind of like that Joel is like actually on the lookout for them and like picks them up for her.
Like, hey Ellie, found another comic book.
Yeah. Anyway, so next you do fall. You go to the University of Eastern Colorado.
I mean, we were in fall. We're still in fall.
Oh, we're still in fall?
Yeah.
I forget. Okay, yeah.
There's split up in two sections.
Right, there's just another jump where you go to
Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado.
It's basically Wyoming.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
This is another thing I think is really fun, is all the different environments they choose to depict in this post-apocalyptic setting. Like, doing it at a college, fun.
Yeah,
I like
especially that. It is just fun. We both go to a college in Colorado, so it's just kind of a fun little like, oh hey,
yeah,
this
go big
looks
horse.
Vaguely familiar. Yeah, here we go.
And so that's kind of fun. I like, and this is another part where it's a while before you fight anything. It's a lot of just moving around. You have some parts with clickers early on, but those really aren't encounters where you're meant to do a lot of fighting. It's mostly just moving through stealthily. And
just that whole, I love like this whole sequence where you go through the freshman dorms that have been infested with the cordyceps fungus and stuff, and it's just like
you see the note from the kid, and
and they just do such a good job of recreating dorm rooms in the video game, like everything, like you know, like all these environments are so well realized, but it's like that's one where it's like it's sort of still somewhat fresh in my mind, so it's like I see like this is a very, you guys did your research, like it's. You didn't, obviously, the art team went to a fucking college and were like, this is what dorm rooms look like right now.
And this is what they'll look like when the apocalypse happens.
But it's basically the same. There's not a whole lot of difference between...
They're slightly cleaner.
Between dorm rooms and post-apocalypse dorm rooms. Yeah, exactly.
In any case.
There are less rats, because all the rats are dead now.
All right, so you move through all that, and then And as the tension's growing, you have this sense very early on they're not going to be here.
Yeah.
And once you get to that,
you
it's
see
like
some monkeys, and then you realize, oh wait, the Firefly dudes were assholes, and they were like experimenting on monkeys and like infecting the monkeys, and then that bites them in the ass because the monkey bites them in the ass.
Yes,
and that's what starts the infection. So that's why the Fireflies leave.
Yes, but then this is obviously a very important moment in retrospect because you kill a lot of dudes here, and then Joel gets violently impaled on a
piece of rebar. Yeah,
I don't think I've ever done this before. I literally gasped when that happened.
I did too. I was like, oh no, because particularly, I mean, because I guess you kind of know since they're doing the season framework, you kind of know that Joel's not going to die, but you're like, there's not enough, like, there's still too much game, it feels like, for Joel not to die, but you're still, like, kind of like, is the game going to end? Am I just going, because you do start playing as Ellie in the next sequence, you're like, am I just going to play as Ellie for the rest of the game? Like, what the fuck is going on? Just like,
I thought it was a very real possibility when you get to Winter and it's Ellie. I thought it might be a Red Dead Redemption kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just like, but like halfway through the game, or that'd be just more like 3/4 of the way through the game. But it's like, because when he gets impaled on rebar, that is not a pleasant experience. Like he's bleeding out. Like it's a.
I love that part though
where
you're playing as him dying and you're moving as him and you just have this such intense connection to him. That's when Ellie really, I feel like, comes into her own as
because she kills a whole bunch of dudes.
Oh there. It's disturbing to start seeing her do all this. And Ashley Johnson is just fantastic through this whole sequence, just desperately trying to figure out what to do with Joel. It's when she has to become an adult essentially.
Yeah,
and then you collapse, and it's like, I was wondering, is Joel dead? That doesn't necessarily feel like how they would treat this character.
Yeah.
They would do something bigger if he's going to die, but anyway, you get to Winter, and it's Ellie, and it's like, there's definitely that. They actually do this several times in the game, where you see someone alone, and you wonder if the other has died. They do it at the end also the other way around.
Yeah. And it's, and one thing that I really like that this actually like kind of continues throughout the game, but like how they do the, the whole season structure is super cliche in terms of like, oh, the symbology, spring is new life and winter is death and whatever, that's like, that's fucking everything. But I like how they slightly shift it where the game begins in summer and ends in spring, and winter is not death. Like, because you kind of expect that it's going to be, okay, Joel dies in winter, but it's like winter is like this time of hardship that it's not about death, it's about kind of becoming an adult, because it's like, you go through the shit during winter. Winter's fucking hard. It doesn't end, but since the game's about survival, you don't die. You survive winter, and that changes you. And I like that it's like this slight, again, like kind of like what they've done in a lot of other places, this slight twist on cliche that feels very meaningful and appropriate to the game, where it's like, okay, like you're kind of reworking my understanding of how these seasons traditionally work symbolically.
Yeah. So, the winter portion is, as you said, it's either the best part of the game or in some ways the most impactful in terms of just what you're doing is in gameplay. And it's 90% of that is because you're playing as Ellie.
Yeah.
And Ellie is more violent than Joel because she has the knife and she
because she needs to be, because she can't just put a dude in a sleeper hold and then like hold him there for like 3 seconds and he dies because he collapses fucking like carotid artery or whatever.
Right. So, I mean, and you start out, again, from a place of relative peace. You're hunting the deer. Mm-hmm. That fucking deer is kind of annoying. But anyway, you kill the deer, and then you have in negotiations with these two guys, including Nolan North Davis. And at first,
don't know it's Nolan North yet.
And you just don't know what to think of these people yet, but you're pretty much in Ellie's mindset of, there's always a possibility these guys are genuine, but I'm not going to believe on that possibility.
Ellie's like, because in the cutscene she's very smart and like, no, fuck you. Like, I'm not going to put my goddamn bow and arrow down. I will put an arrow right between your eyes.
What I love even more is that she makes him give him his hunting rifle.
The rifle,
And then she just uses that because that's easier to hold than a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then, I mean, this is a super challenging part of the game where you're with David, just fighting off the infected while you're
because all of your supplies are basically gone. Like, you have the bow and arrow, and then then you have his hunting rifle.
And that hunting rifle is awesome.
Yeah. It's just, like, kind of fully upgraded.
Yep. It's great. But anyway, once you get through this part, this is, as I've said before, to me, the big turning point in the game. In many ways, one of the most thematically integral cutscenes in the whole game is when you're talking to David, Ellie is, and you've come to kind of trust David. Because he could have killed you. He could have done something bad to you.
Yeah, and Nolan North does a really good job of, like, treading that line between creepy and nice in a way that is, like, you're kind of on the fence, but when you first see him, you're like, maybe this guy's actually okay. Like,
it
goes for such a long time before it reveals that, okay, no, this is not an okay dude.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, like maybe I should trust this guy.
Yeah, and then he talks about how everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And I always hate it when they trot that out, but they use it to great effect here. That cliche of everything happens for a reason, because he explains how he sent out a scavenging party into the city. A crazy man slaughtered all of them, and then you perk up hearing that. It's like, oh. And he says, and there was a little girl with them. And then for me at least, it was like just something snapped. My whole perception on the game shifted. It's not that I was very, very hyper aware of the violence and everything, and that, what Joel was doing was bad, but I always had this perspective because I was playing as Joel of, well, what else am I going to do? I had the Joel perspective of, they fought, they attacked first, they're the bad guys, this is what, I have to do this, I've got Ellie, what else am I supposed to do? But you see it from David's perspective, and it's that guy's
this crazy motherfucker who
killed all of them.
Guys.
And again,
like,
it's a great example of minimizing ludonarrative dissonance, because all those people you killed, they matter. They are referenced.
They have impact.
Yeah, they have real impact here. And then Ellie is paying for it. She's the one who's going to pay for it here to a certain degree, and she's got to go save Joel. And I love the revelation here. I mean, you knew Joel was alive as soon as she talks about the medicine.
Yeah.
Or at least you suspect it.
Yeah.
And but then you go back.
They hold off on that reveal that Joel's there for so long that you're like, he's fucking dead. Like, it's going to be like a dog or something that she needs the medicine for. At a certain point, I was almost convinced it's like, he's fucking dead. Like, Jesus. Like, you've been holding off on this reveal for so long.
But I like how long they hold off on it for. And then you actually, you run back to the house. You've got all these guys on your tail. And I like how, you've seen, Ellie has learned so much from Joel and from her experiences that she's done a really good job setting up this house for them, taking care of Joel. She's got this medicine. And then this is when the winter portion just gets insane, is when she decides, she's going to lead them away from Joel. There's just very much, these are my, winter and spring are my two favorite portions, because they are inverses of each other.
Yeah.
One with Ellie and one with Joel, of them basically doing everything they can to save the other. And in the winter portion here with Ellie, it just becomes so dark and horrifying and just climactic in this sense of, this is everything horrific about the game maximized once you are fighting the guys on their turf as Ellie. You're this little girl, and for me at least, the first time I saw Ellie killed, for me, when I died and had to respawn, that's really tough to watch. This little girl that you love getting her throat ripped out.
Yeah, and it's it was almost harder for me when you do the first time you do this the stealth kill with the knife that isn't even really a stealth kill anymore, which I thought that was a clever thing where it's it's not even just the animation is different, it functions differently because you're not killing a dude quietly. You're a fucking 100-pound 15-year-old girl. You're not going to kill this 6-foot tall burly motherfucker. Mm-hmm. It's her stealth kill is I am going to jump on your back, take out my switchblade and just stab you in the chest as much as I can, violently, just holding all of her weight onto the blade to try to kill the dude as quickly as possible. It's those animations of her stealth kills are the most brutal things in the entire fucking game.
They are.
So it's when that happens, I'm like, oh my god. Holy shit. It's one thing to shoot a guy. It's another thing to stab a guy multiple times using your entire body weight to kill him. That's just, fucking brutal.
It's always tough
one dude to, throw a brick in a dude's face and then beat him over the head multiple times with a lead pipe. It's another dude thing to kill a guy with a switchblade.
And they clearly put so much thought into how you play as Ellie and how that works in contrast with Joel, because you are conditioned at this point in these scenarios to use that triangle button stealth kill, but you become apprehensive about it. It's when you do it with Joel, it's violent, but it has to be done. But with Ellie, it's I don't want to put Ellie through this.
Yeah, and it's not as reliable because it's not as stealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And then her listen mode is not as, that doesn't have quite the range that Joel's does. She's smaller, so she can hide behind things a little bit better.
Yeah,
there is a substantial, even though you don't play. I mean, actually, you play as her for half of the winter section, but it's in the scope of the entire game, you don't play as her for a very long time. But kind of with the horse, it's they put a huge amount of thought into how Ellie could have been the playable character for the entire game, and you wouldn't even notice.
Right. It's very well done, and yeah, you definitely get a better sense for that character by playing as her.
Yeah.
And that's crucial. And then I love when you start switching back and forth. Joel wakes up, and I love that Joel's just so confused, and he goes out and starts fighting. He's where is she? It's the Batman kind of moment.
Yeah.
And it's when you start seeing those hints of insanity you just heard about, they're coming out. Yeah. They're coming out really strong.
Just the fucking torture scene.
Yep. God, it's tough.
Oh my god.
He doesn't. He in no way needs to do that to get the information. He needs.
No, I mean,
But,
like really blatantly, like
Yeah.
he just basically admits it. 'Cause he he does the whole thing where he like just like point on this map where it is, or I'll pop your goddamn kneecap off or whatever. And it's like I'm gonna like confirm this information with your buddy I have chained up to the radiator in the corner. And then it's just like the guy marks it, and then he just fucking kills the dude. Walks over to his friend, and the guy's like, "I'm not gonna fucking tell you anything." I don't care. I believe him. Just kills that guy too. It's like
with a crowbar.
Yeah, and again, this is another part in the game where the classy thing to do would be to cut when you smack the dude in the face with the crowbar, like immediately. No, you smack him in the face with the crowbar, and then you see his face like smack against the radiator, like for just like again like 5 frames of like you see the effect of the violence, and then it cuts. Yeah, that's a crazy cutscene.
I mean, you really are getting just a very different take on Joel than you'd had before, and it's very much seeding, what happens next. I mean, this is such a well-arced game where, everything that happens matters so much to the ultimate end game, you know? And
because this is like the only like significant time that the characters have spent not with each other.
Right.
Like with Joel, it's like the only significant time you have seen your main character you're playing as like completely alone, like in a story sense as well as a gameplay sense.
So we've talked about violence a little bit here.
Yeah,
I feel the most horrific moment of violence is the one you don't see, and that's the end of this section. Ellie fighting David, taking the machete, and just going to town on his face. I'm glad they didn't show it. I think that would have been going too far. I think the way they do it is perfect because it's like you just don't want Ellie to reach that point, and it's so tough to watch. But it also it's an important moment for that character to hit because it's the culmination of everything that's happened throughout Winter, Mm-hmm. And I feel like that moment is so powerful, and then the scenes that sort of following it, ending the Winter portions, and her and Joel reuniting and getting through this. It feels like that to me. I was actually wondering for a while if that was the end of the game. I was kind of thinking this was the climax and this was it, because it just felt like they had been through so much shit. And actually, I think in typical zombie movies and stuff like that, that is kind of where they would end, where you kind of hit the rock bottom, and then you're together and you leave, and that's like the ending. Mm-hmm. But obviously, they do something much better than that.
Yeah, and then like for that whole sequence, like I love, like I think that it was a really interesting and like. I was something like when I started encountering it, I was going to be nervous about where they have it's a boss fight, like it's a straight up you have a boss fight with David.
Yeah,
but it's a really really well done boss fight, and it made me nervous because I have played the Uncharted games. They do not have good boss fights. They really do not have good boss fights. And this one, like that, the encounter with David is super intense, but I thought it was so much fun because you enter that area and you see like all the broken glass on the floor, like of course you're in like this diner, and so there's this broken glass like in these like sort of just strategic locations. You're like, what is that? And then you step over it and you hear the noise and you're like, oh, this is going to be very important. I'm going to have to avoid this broken glass in the future. Like this is something important here because it's like very obvious. And then you have this whole thing where it's like where David comes out and then he's sort of stalking you and you're stalking him and you're just trying to because he gets really, really quiet, and you have to wait till he steps over the broken glass. I thought that was just really clever and a really well-designed boss fight around sort of the heart of the combat mechanic, which was the stealth action gameplay of like this sort of like cat and mouse game that you're playing with him, and like just all that boiled down to that one fight. I thought that was really well done.
Fantastic. I also love the environment that happens in, the big sort of pub restaurant you're in.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool environment for it to happen in. And it's super terrifying because I don't know about you. I played Winter in one sitting.
I played the whole game in 2 sittings.
Oh, okay.
The first sitting was summer. The second sitting was fall, winter, and spring. So that's how I know summer is half the game. Fall, winter, and spring is the other half of the game because they were took basically the exact same amount of time for me in my 2 play sessions.
Okay. So anyway, but winter was one I basically just sat down and played. That was that night for Last of Us with me. And it was. I felt so fucking drained by when you get to the end of that winter part. And it's just it's so tough to get through this emotionally, and everything you've seen. I mean, there's the whole thing where they're cannibals. You see that too.
Yeah.
And Ellie is almost chopped up and eaten. And so once you get to that boss fight and the last bit of gameplay of winter, and you are just so drained. It's like you don't feel like you have the energy. You feel the same way as Ellie. It's like I don't know if I can do this. But you get through it, and then it all comes out in that macheteing on his face. It's like, you just... Everything you have left goes into that.
Yeah. Fuck you, Nolan North! Fuck you! Troy Baker is our man now.
She really hated Uncharted.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, fuck you and fuck Nathan Drake. You smarmy motherfucker. You've killed thousands of people, you fucking asshole, in the name of, she's like, fun and games and your dumb archaeology. Fuck you and your ludonarrative dissonance, you fucking cunt. That would be great if Ellie was...
I want to hear Ashley Johnson voice that monologue you just made up.
I mean, to be fair, if she voiced that monologue in the character of Ellie, there'd be way more cursing in it.
Yes.
That is one of the things, and this is actually something because that sort of, comes, she stops doing that as the game goes on, as it sort of, gets beaten out of her. But that's one detail I really love about Ellie's character, particularly for Summer. She swears like a fucking sailor.
She does.
It is ridiculous, because she's a teenager.
Yeah. It's some of the best writing for a teenager I've ever seen, because it's not... They don't sugarcoat it. They don't sanitize it. It's really good that way.
Yeah, some of the best stuff with her, with the swearing stuff, is in the Summer sequence when you're with the trap dude, I think Bill, I think that's his name. And, when you first, actually have a conversation with him, and he, doesn't trust you yet, so, he handcuffs Ellie, and then, she, yanks it off or whatever, and she just has this one line, she's, they're arguing, she's just like, fuck you! You handcuffed me! There's something about, this, she's just swearing at this asshole dude.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
And it's not in her best interest to be doing that.
Yeah, no. We here because you will Joel some favors, motherfucker.
Yeah. So anyway, spring starts with the Tokyo Jungle flashback scene.
Yes.
Where you are, it's not a flashback for the game, but it made me think of Tokyo Jungle, where you're in the city, and it's an absolutely beautiful sequence. One of my favorites in the whole game, where Ellie spots a giraffe, and you wind up following it around throughout the city and see this whole herd of giraffes.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, before that, one of the things I like, because how they transition that, where they go from winter to spring, is that they sort of have the, when it cuts to spring or whatever, you see Ellie's, staring at this, pictograph of a moose, on a wall, to link to. She's clearly still dealing with all the shit from before, and I love this sequence where it's there's no combat for the longest time. This is a huge stretch of the game where there's no combat, where you're just making your way into Salt Lake City, and I just love this, Joel, Ellie has become, really detached because she's still really shocked at what she did and what she had to go through, and Joel's, desperately trying to connect with her, because Joel's finally at this point. I just love this weird thing where it's Joel has been so gruff the entire game, but now that Ellie has saved his life, he's fully committed to this relationship at this point. And when he's at that point, Ellie is at this other point where she's kind of dealing with, I'm kind of turning into Joel in this really horrific way, and the inversion of their roles in their relationship, I thought was really well handled.
I really love it too, and you even get the sense, even when she's detached, she still clearly loves Joel.
Yeah.
She really has a lot of affection for this guy, a lot of respect, but it's still this. It's just tough to process these emotions. You can't verbalize that. What these emotions they're feeling are. And it's a really great piece of writing. I really love that, especially after the winter stuff, you have to let the game breathe for a while. Because if you had any big combat scenarios right after winter, that would not work at all.
Yeah. And one of the in terms of talking about ludonarrative dissonance and merging story and gameplay, I think one of the most clever things they do with that section is throughout the game you have these very light puzzle, just traversal things of oh, we've got a ladder, I have to move it over there. And it's just a slight pacing thing the game does. But you see that animation of I've moved ladder over here, or hey, step on my hands and I'll boost you up to this area.
Right.
And there's that point in here where it's okay, I know I need to boost Ellie up here. So you go over, you hit triangle, you've done this a million fucking times, this is the end of the game. And so it's you start I'm getting ready to, you step on my hands and I'll throw you up there, and Ellie, where the fuck are you? And it's they have this specific different animation for that one time where it's Ellie is over sitting on a bench thinking about shit, and you're Ellie, I hit triangle. Did you not? I hit triangle. You're supposed to. Ellie, I want to play the game more.
And then you have the giraffe scene, very nice. But then, then you get to the fireflies, and this is, now we can talk about the ending. And I feel this is what I'm most excited to talk about with the game. Because, plot-wise, what happens is you get here,
finally find those firefly motherfuckers.
Right.
How the fuck did all you assholes get to Utah?
Yeah.
What were you... Did you get a goddamn plane? Were you riding the fucking giraffes? What was going on?
Yeah, you meet Marlene again. You find out Ellie has been taken to surgery because the only way to extract the theoretical cure... I mean, I think it's important to note they don't know 100% that they can work with this.
It
Probably will, yeah. But anyway, so the cure, they need to kill her and take her brain out.
Because the fungus wraps around the brain, so it's like that's how they have to extract it.
And obviously, Joel's not okay with that.
Yeah, Joel's no.
And I think one of the things that I think is so important to note here is that you understand how Joel is going to react before he reacts, because you know Joel so well at this point. And there is no possible scenario where that would be acceptable to him. There just is.
I actually don't agree with that, because they set this up earlier when you're talking, because it's like that whole giraffe sequence, which like the whole like giraffe thing, I think is one of the most beautiful sections of the whole game, because you find out, you like sort of discover how relevant that is in this part of the section of the game, where she talks about Ellie talks about how like she like, because Joel basically is like, we don't have to do this, like we can just fucking leave, like we don't. Like, I don't care anymore. Like, I've gotten out of this what I need to get out of this. I've gotten a new friend. I've got, like, a new companion that I can live for, so I don't give a fuck. But she says, like, this has to mean something, because she's still a kid. She still has that sort of, like, optimistic, hopeful, idealistic side to her. It's like, I can't have killed, like, dozens of people, like, brutally murdered this one dude with a machete for fucking nothing. So I can definitely see a situation where Joel, for like the one time in his fucking life, decides to do something for someone else. Like to be selfless in a more true sense of like, Ellie made this choice that she wanted to give herself to. But I feel like she didn't know the specifics, but it's like I could see like it would be exceptional for him. It would be outside the norm for him. But I could see Joel finally just being like, okay, I'm going to trust someone else. I'm going to allow this to happen.
And I guess I can't, because I think there's a constant distance in the game between the ideal of who Joel is and who we see him as and who we play him as.
But I'm saying that there is a chance for him. Like, there's still this chance that he's going to do something selfless, because everything he does in the game is selfish. Like, every single choice he makes is for himself. It's like there's this one chance he's not going to do that, I guess. Like I just feel like I didn't think he was going to do it. I'm saying there is a chance. Like he could have. There is a choice there to be made.
I agree. There's a choice, and I guess why I feel like it's inevitable that he's going to make the choice he makes is because
he's a selfish motherfucker.
Well, he's not. It's not just that. It's that he has psychologically. We've seen the point where he's at, where he was so thoroughly and irrevocably damaged by the loss of his daughter, and that we've just seen what Ellie has become to him now, and psychologically, he can't go through that again. I think that's one of those things where I think it's something where
it would kill him.
It's out of his control.
It would literally kill him.
Yes,
he would just kill himself.
And if he's a survivor, he can't do that. And that's what I. And if
that's
he's a survivor,
we
know him to be. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so it's.
And that's why I'm saying, it's like there is a possible ending you could write where the theme of the game is not. It is a lot more optimistic. Where the theme of the game would be, the ultimate conclusion would be, you become something selfless at the end. You allow Ellie to be this sacrificial lamb for humanity.
And that would just feel wrong to me with what the game is, though.
I agree. And, I'm saying there's a chance. Like, that's what makes the choice he makes significant.
I agree. I will agree with that. But anyway, so he makes the choice, and then, I mean, this part, in terms of just the difficulty of what you're feeling and what you're playing, this part is just crushing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, but at the same time, I feel the way the game is made, this is a very complex idea to put together, but I feel completely complicit in what I'm doing with Joel at that point as the player. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, I want to be high-minded and be selfless and do this, but it's like, but at the same time, no, I'm saying like you in the back of your mind, you're like, that's what you're supposed to do for humanity. But as Joel and knowing Ellie, it's like, I'm completely complicit in this. I'm going to go save Ellie. There's nothing else I can do. I have to do that.
Yeah.
And you completely understand Joel's mindset and understand psychologically, as you said, it would kill him to do anything else.
Yeah.
This is what he has to be. And going through that, I mean, there's some very tough gameplay in this section.
Yeah.
Particularly that one with the big multiple room setup with all the art soldiers is fucking tough. That was another one that took me close to 2 hours. And that was one where it was so late when I was finishing that and I had to get up for class the next morning that I actually took a break after that encounter and then played like the last 30 minutes of the game the next day. Because I was that's the thing about Last of Us, for me at least, I had to take breaks just because it's a game that is so intense and the gameplay is tough, and it's also emotionally draining. I felt like I enjoyed the game better when I took it more in chunks.
Yeah, like for me, because I played it basically on a weekend, where it's just like, like those 2 days were just the game, but it was like I played a 2-hour chunk, and then it'd be like, I got to do something for a little bit, and then I'd do something for like an hour. Then it's like, okay, I got to get back into this.
So anyway, yeah, but like that for me over a slightly longer period of time. The other thing is I had stuff going on otherwise in my life throughout that period. But anyway, yeah, you get to the end, and so ultimately what happens in the game is you kill fucking everyone you can find.
Yeah.
You take
I
Ellie
only
out
killed one of the doctors because who gives a shit about the other two?
Yeah, you take Ellie out, and then I want to say
Monster
I think Troy Baker's maybe best moments in the game for me, or the ones that hit me hardest, is the dialogue he says while you're running around with Ellie escaping, and just he's snapped in that moment.
Yeah.
He is not thinking coherently in the slightest. He's saying, "Come on, little girl, you'll be okay," and that switch that he's calling her little girl now, is absolutely crucial. I mean, he's kind of deranged at that point, and he's just so consumed with the emotion of the moment, and I think Troy Baker portrays that so well, and that's in a non-cutscene moment. That's totally, you're moving her, and that part is, like, that's the part of the game that brought me closest to tears, is playing through that, and just Joel being at that point, and that low point in his life of doing this, that is in many ways a terrible action, and it's so tough to get through, and then that final, it's not the final cutscene, but the final cutscene of this section, where it switches between you talking to Marlene, and then driving away in the car.
Yeah, and this is another, like, you don't know what ultimately happened here. Like, you don't know, really, it's kind of like with Joel having survived, like, you're pretty fucking sure that he saved Ellie, but, like, when it's cutting to Joel driving, you just see Joel driving. You have no idea where Ellie is. And it's like, and that was sort of like, I was thinking, like, there's kind of two ways this ends. Like, either Ellie's in the back seat, or Joel just drives this car to a wall and just dies right now.
Yeah, and it's... And what's great about that is that after you see him driving, it cuts back to Marlene. I think this is when she gives the list of reasons why this is better for Ellie. Yeah. And they're compelling, well-reasoned arguments, you know? Yeah. And you think, did she sway him? Is there any reason, any way? And then it cuts back to the car, pans back, she's there, and it's like, Marlene's dead.
Yeah.
There's just no way Marlene's dead. And then you go to it, and you see, not only did he shoot her in the stomach, he made sure she was fucking dead. Because as he says, you'll just follow her. Just the cold iciness in his voice when he says that.
Yeah.
It's, like I said, he says snapped. So you do that, you've saved Ellie, and then you lie to her, make a very big egregious lie about the Fireflies have multiple people who are immune, turns out the cure is worthless, doesn't work. And
Joss Whedon actually did survive. It turns out he's going to save us all, so you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, he's finally making Firefly Season 2.
Yeah, and that will save humanity, clearly.
Yeah. So
you just like sit an infected down in front of the TV, start playing Firefly Season 2. By the time it's done, the infected is cured.
I think that would work.
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt.
Yeah, in any case. So you tell this to Ellie, you immediately see she's not buying it.
Yeah.
And then you have a little epilogue scene, which is them going back. Where were they going back to? I didn't...
They were going back to Tommy's plantation, farm, whatever you'd call it.
I was going to say, there's no way they were going to go back to Boston.
Yeah, no, yeah. Not that shithole.
Yeah, so, and you're on the hill, and the last exchange of the game is probably my favorite cutscene from the standpoint of writing, because I love Ellie's monologue, basically about survivor guilt. And you just see their contrasting worldviews, and they kind of humanize Joel again in those last moments. Not that they ever dehumanized him, but, they kind of bring him back to Earth to a certain degree, where you get back to his base philosophy that motivated all of this. Yeah. Which is, he's saying, to him, surviving is everything, and to her, she's seeing a larger picture, because the trauma she's gone through, because it happened to her when she was younger, all she can see is that larger picture to a certain extent. And she asks, can you swear to me that what you said was true? He says, I swear, and she says, okay. And that's it. And that is perfect.
Yeah, that ending's so great, because, like, again, the conventional thing to do would be to end with, like, oh, Ellie's in the backseat or whatever, and you end with them, like, driving off into the sunset. But I love you get, like, this brief moment. It's kind of weird where they even, like, give you play as Ellie and, like, climb up whatever, like the hills or whatever for, like, plays for, like, a minute. Yeah. And then it goes into the last cutscene. And it's just, like, I love that it's, like, this, like, proper fucking ambiguous ending. It's not, like, a bullshit ambiguous ending like Inception or something like that. It's like, did the top fall? Who gives a fuck? Like, this is a, like... Why are these people like? It's like, in that moment, you become detached from the characters, wondering, it's like, does Ellie fully believe Joel? Like, what does that mean for Ellie? Like, is she going to really accept this? Is she going to leave? Like, is she going to ultimately be angry? Like, is this going to tear them apart? Or does she believe Joel? Like, there's this you don't fully understand the character motivations here because they remove you from that moment like very temporarily.
Yeah, and let's talk about all of it. That's what we're here for. So I guess we should start with the overall morality of what precedes that, and then what Joel does, because I think it's a very complex thing to talk about. As I said, when I finished the game, I just didn't know what to feel, and I think I phrased it to my brother as, that is the most morally ambiguous a game, let alone a game, like a piece of media has ever made me feel. That is true moral ambiguity, where you just don't know what the answers are. So,
I know what the answer is.
What's the answer?
Joel's right. Like, Joel, in this situation, like, you're not... It doesn't matter. Curing the fungus, curing the virus, it doesn't fucking matter. Because, and it's like, what cemented it for me was the giraffe sequence. Because it's like, that's what fully is, like, makes me realize, because it's the only other time, other than some dogs you see other wildlife living in this environment, and you're like, those giraffes, they don't give a fuck. Like, it doesn't matter to the giraffes. Like, all of a sudden, the giraffes have a lot bigger area to roam around. And, like, in the course of these 20 years, you see, like, you travel through these destroyed cities and see nature having reclaimed what we had kind of, like, destroyed and taken over, and it looks fucking beautiful. Like, it's kind of really dark and ominous in some ways, but then you, like, look at it, it's just like, this is fucking beautiful. Like, the way they, especially the lighting of the game, they, like, capture that so brilliantly, and then you just see these giraffes, and it's like, the giraffes don't care. The giraffes are surviving perfectly fine. Humanity is perfectly fine. Like, it's not this big deal. Like, whatever. It's a fungus that infects us and kills a bunch of us, and you deal with that and you survive through that. But it's something that would have to happen kind of inevitably. Is sort of, I feel like, the game's conclusion is like, nature is going to take over. Humanity can't be the top dog. Like, our preconception that, like, we are automatically the best life form and, like, we are going to conquer everything. Even if you cure that fungus, something else would happen in the future. Yeah. We would get knocked down a peg again, whatever. Like, the most important thing for these characters is surviving, because that's what it is. That's everything in the game. The cordyceps fungus is just trying to survive and reproduce. The giraffes, all that shit is just trying to survive. Joel's got it locked down. I just need to survive. Since he's a human, to survive, he needs a companion. He needs someone else with him. He needs someone to survive for, and he just uses Ellie as that.
And I think, I would phrase it in a different way. I basically agree with you, and I was very interested to hear what you would have to say on this issue specifically, because, I just finished the game last night, so I have not had time to read what other people have interpreted the game as, and I don't know how other people are tackling this ending, but to me, the way I read the game is that it's a very, very ambiguous situation, and Joel's final choice, it could go either way, and either choice would be defendable, but... at the end of the day, for me, what cements this is that the humanity we see throughout this game is not worth saving. It's not worth that effort. And, it's not this bigger, grander picture the Fireflies are trying to protect, the bigger, grander picture Ellie is kind of worried about. As you just said, it doesn't matter. It's just not, and especially I think one of the most important things to note, and I started looking for this very quickly after I started realizing that the first time someone dies in the game is your daughter, and she's killed by a person, not an infected. An infected never kills someone over the course of the game, in terms of people you are with. They bite, like, the boy gets bit, but it's the father who kills him. That's the closest it comes to the infected actually doing the killing. Other than that, it's the people are committing the main atrocities, and it's humanity that's doing this to themselves in many of these scenarios. And humanity is so divided in all these, it's become animalistic. It's become a back to nature kind of thing. So I don't know how that cure would work in the sense of how they would get this around the world, how they would unite humanity again, how this could restart. And even if it did...
it would take just hundreds of years.
Right. And as you said, even if it did, nature's fine. Humanity's fine. There are,
it's like, big fucking deal we don't get our skyscrapers and our fluffy beds, like whatever. Like, because these characters are never going to get that. Why the fuck do you give a shit about humanity hundreds of years from now?
And that's the bigger point for me, is that when I think about it, the larger point does not matter. If survival is the theme, then I think the arc for Joel is about, do you just live, or do you live for something?
Yeah.
And what he ultimately chooses, and even though I think there is an element of outright psychosis to what happens, if you look at especially the way he's talking to Ellie in their final scene together going up the hill, he's just supplanted her as his daughter.
Yeah.
He's saying, you're just like my daughter, she would have loved this too, you would have really loved her. It's very clear there is a psychological complex here with him and Ellie.
Yeah.
And it's it's a fairly healthy one because he's not doing wrong by her in a certain sense. He is doing wrong by her in another sense.
He's just completely 100% using her. Like that's kind of the action in the end that I feel is most like morally dubious. Is like he ultimately has this very disingenuous relationship with Ellie, where it's like their like relationship developed to this point where it's like he just uses her. Like, and it feels like this is not the first time he's done this. Like, it's the specifics are like more like this Dardo surrogate thing, yeah, but it's clear he has latched onto people and used them as excuses to survive. He did that with his brother. He presumably did that with Tess. It's like, this is what he's been doing, and now he has...
But I do think it's a little...
he had nobody else left with Ellie. Like, if Ellie was gone, what the fuck does Joel do? Like, he's got nothing. Like, Tess was the only other person you saw him have a relationship with other than his brother, and his brother basically hates his goddamn guts.
Yeah. But I think that is the point of the ending, though, is that it's, if he's going to live, it's about living for something, and I think if he has this survivor complex at the end, the choice he has to make is to kill the Fireflies and get Ellie back, because what does life... I think that this is one of the big questions the game is asking at the end, is what does life mean if you don't have someone to live it with, if you don't have something to live for? And he is absolutely using Ellie to a certain degree. I don't know if I would
think to an immense degree.
Okay.
Like he saves her for himself. Like, he doesn't...
I agree. He's
not saving her because she wants to be alive, or she's asserted that she has, because she has survivor guilt, and I don't think Joel would be able to understand that concept. Similarly, I don't think he fully can grasp the concept of killing yourself when he saw Sam or Henry kill himself. He's so obsessive about his survival thing that's I don't think it crosses his mind that it's Ellie didn't. I don't think Ellie ultimately wanted. Maybe in the future she would think that was an okay thing, but right now, no, fuck no.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying is that even if there is this, I agree with you. It's an immensely unhealthy aspect of this relationship in some degree. Yeah, but I wouldn't be quite that cynical on it, I guess, because I do feel like there is something more to this relationship with Ellie than there was to Tess or his brother or some of these, because I guess the way they seem to enjoy each other's company, the sheer amount of intensity he has in his affection for her, and in terms of how far he goes to save her, and how much he does.
The main difference is that Ellie relies on him just as much as he has been relying on her in the past. Clearly, his brother was terrified of him. Tess was just as capable as him. They didn't need each other. Yeah.
And yes, and that element of need is very important. But, definitely, it's... And obviously the question of violence comes in here in a very strong way, and how much he consumes himself into violence to save her and to do this. Yeah. And that this relationship will always be marked with blood in that way. And there's always going to be that element to it. So it's very unstable, and we are left in this very ambiguous place. But as you said... if I were in this scenario, I would have done what Joel did. And no question for me, as tough as it is to imagine yourself in that scenario, and I can tell you right now, Last of Us has hammered out any fantasy of living in an apocalyptic society I might have ever had. It's fucking terrifying.
Why would you ever have any sort of fantasy?
Not a fantasy. I phrased that wrong, but yeah. Anyway.
It sure would be nice if I lived in a world where 60% of humanity was dead, and I had to scramble every single day just to barely get enough resources to survive the next one. That would be wonderful.
Well, anyway, but yeah, I think, the way they chose to end that, and the specific moral dilemmas at play here are so fascinating. Yeah. And as I said, it really is, my reading of it is built by everything else I saw in the game. Your reading was built by everything else you saw in the game. And so it really is clear here, this is not a scenario where the ending is a unit unto itself. It's about, really how you read it is about how you read everything else in the game.
Yeah, and how you read it is how you look at the characters and sort of parse out the character motivations at the end of the day. Because some of that stuff is sort of so vague and left open to interpretation, because a lot of it is just alluded to in a single sentence when he's talking to his brother and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So, the other questions to talk about here is, you mentioned a bunch of the ambiguities of, what happens next for these characters.
Yeah.
What's your reading of where they go from here in their lives? Can they just live happily with Tommy?
No. I don't think that's plot. I think Ellie is going to grow increasingly distant from Joel past this point. I don't think, the way that ends, the relationship, because there is technically a question of whether or not she knows, but she does not believe him. There's just you just can tell that she doesn't.
It's going to eat away at her, because she doesn't. Yeah.
She can't trust him anymore because he's just flat out lied to her face.
Oh, would it have been? I mean, if he had actually told her the truth of what he did, would that have been worse or better for their relationship?
Their relationship is done.
Okay.
Like the decision killed.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I think that decision would have killed their future relationship. Like I don't think they get a happy yay we go off. I mean, Joel's gonna get killed by like there's like some dude in that world that is hunting Joel down. Like there's got to be one dude who's just like, this guy has killed and destroyed everything I care about for like really no good reason. Like he could have just stayed in Boston. That fucking dick. I think Joel's gonna get killed by someone. Like there's no way you cut that wide a path of destruction and somebody doesn't come after your ass.
Well, you've also got to consider that no matter what, Ellie is very young. Joel, for a post-apocalyptic society without advanced medicine, is fairly old. He's in his 50s.
Yeah.
He does not have... Either way, his time is much more limited than hers.
Yeah.
And, she is going to live the majority of her life without him, and you have to wonder about, how her life is going to be marked by that, what choices she's ultimately going to make. Is she going to try to find the Fireflies again and initiate this again?
Like, how much of a Joel does she turn into, I think is kind of the question where it's like, you do get that sense of, like, she's sort of being molded into him because you see like her becoming progressively more violent, like just a lot more like him over the course of the game.
She even picks up his hearing vision.
Exactly. His bizarre mutant echolocation that he developed over the course of the... What if Joel's a clicker? Like, what if that's the twist at the end and that's how you have the listing vision?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you watched through the credits, but that's what happens at the end.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Not really.
Yeah, I know.
I'm really glad there was no post-credits thing.
I didn't expect there to be one, but it's like a lot like Bioshock Infinite. This is a game where it's like it's not like you're like sitting through the credits to like get a treat at the end. You're sitting through the credits and it's like, what the fuck? Oh my god.
Yeah. And the music is great.
Yeah, I need to process this for a little bit. Jesus.
I know this was very similar. I mean, the difference is that Bioshock Infinite, to me its best story content is that last half hour.
Yeah.
Last of Us is much more a cumulative build.
Yeah, because it's just got such a powerful character focus.
Yeah.
Like Joel and Ellie are so like fully realized, and their relationship develops in such a natural way that it's like it just goes beyond anything that like it's not even just ignoring video games. Like because you inhabit these characters, and because a video game allows for like this like for me like a 17-hour long length campaign. Like the character work here is sort of unprecedented along like most art forms. Like the only thing that
absolutely
matches it is like novels that can have this like very long form character focus.
I feel like TV shows can do that.
Oh, that's really true. And TV shows don't usually do it that well.
I think a lot of them that I've seen do, but I don't. Yeah.
I don't think it's like not quite the same because it like TV shows are serialized. It's not the same thing to me. Where it's like because you've got like the episodes after episodes after episodes. Like this is like a fucking year of like just one straight.
Yeah.
One thing where it's like with TV shows, it's like the show like evolves and this kind of becomes different over the course of the seasons and stuff. Like the show is sort of this living thing. The game is like this singular product.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic in that regard. It makes you think. The comparison I was making to Bioshock Infinite is you just sit there through the credits. A, because the music is great in both cases and you want to hear it.
Yeah.
And B, because you can't move. And Bioshock Infinite is a similar level of moral and ideological and intellectual ambiguity where you're just thinking about this stuff, and it's great. I mean, I have not, I'll say we're gonna do final thoughts later, but I'll just say really quickly here, nothing I have seen. I'm a film critic, but Bioshock Infinite and Last of Us are so heads and shoulders above any movie I've seen this year, last year. It's just so far above what Hollywood is doing right now, and the impact you have when you finish the game is what proves that to me.
Yeah.
So,
although with the ending credits, I wish they could have taken a page from Bioshock Infinite and had Troy Baker playing the guitar. Yeah, with Ashley Johnson singing a song. Over
a different
the
hymn.
credits. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, how weird is it? Like, I wonder because I have since seen like numerous interviews with Troy Baker, like and Ashley Johnson, like them talking about their like role with this game, but I haven't. Like it's like one of those situations where it's like I wish I could just like be the interviewer because like I have a very specific question for Troy Baker. It's like how did these two games overlap? Because both of them have been in development for so long that it's kind of weird. Like Bioshock, Infinite has been in development for like 6 years, and Last of Us has been in development for 3 years, so Bioshock Infinite is obviously much longer. It's like, at what point did he come on for each of these games? And it's like, is it really fucking weird that both of them come out within a couple of months of each other and being like two of the biggest video game releases of this generation, and him playing the main characters, both of which are like terrible, awful people in a lot of ways. It's like, is Troy Baker, if you were like recording like both of those around the same time, do you think Troy Baker just became evil for like a couple of days where he was just like the most, like just the biggest asshole on the planet?
He like locked
being Booker DeWitt and fucking Joel at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, these are my two favorite games of this console generation, and at least campaigns. Mm-hmm. And I would love to talk to Troy Baker about these two because he is such an immense part of why they work.
Yeah, and it's really cool because like I didn't know this until I started looking up these interviews, but he's a fucking gamer. Like he plays these games. He 100% gets it. It's not like a fakey, like, yeah, I play the video games. Like, no, he fucking, yeah, he's legit, as the kids would say.
Yes. And let's talk about that now. Let's talk about some stuff we missed over the main discussion.
Sure.
Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson. We are obviously very, very big fans of Troy Baker on this podcast. Yes. He is my personal favorite actor in gaming at this moment. and we were sort of introduced to him in terms of when we first noticed him as Kanji Tatsumi in Persona 4. Although I'd heard him in a million things before that.
Yeah, he does so much. I mean, all these voice actors do so much work.
I mean, honestly, where I would have first heard him in a lead role is he is Snow in Final Fantasy 13.
That's true. He is.
It's very good in that, but it's not one of these great characters. It's a Final Fantasy character, and there's kind of
a walking stereotype.
Yes, but anyway, So and obviously Kanji Tatsumi is such a different character from these, and it's been so amazing over the course of this year to hear him in Bioshock Infinite and Last of Us doing completely different performance styles.
Yeah, like particularly for this game. If you did not tell me it was Troy Baker, like going in, if I was not aware of that, I would have a pretty hard time picking him out.
I would never be able to pick it out.
Because, he's definitely putting on because Joel is not, he is not like Joel. Like, he's not this...
Troy Baker is 37,
yeah, exactly. He's not like this 50-something, grizzled, hard-ass motherfucking Texan,
Yeah. And he inhabits this to me is maybe his best performance on that level.
So. And part of that is also helped by Naughty Dog's the writing, and then the performance capture technology allows them to actually give a performance as the character, not just the voice.
It's impossible to compare it to something like Kanji because they're just completely different things. Yeah. But yeah, it's so great because he is so is that character. There's no ego to that performance. It's all about inhabiting that character, and because he did it through performance capture, also he is that character. Mind, body, and soul. Yeah, that's him, and. It's truly amazing. You really cannot place that voice. There are a couple of softer moments when he's talking to Ellie as his daughter kind of thing, where you can kind of hear
where it slips kind of a little bit, not like a bad way, it slips in a way that I can recognize he's Troy Baker, not in his voice is really different now kind of way.
No, it's totally consistent, and throughout, I mean, he's just fantastic. And I think some people might even overlook how good a vocal performance it is because it just is that character so 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout Bioshock Infinite, and that's a fantastic performance, but I was always kind of aware this is Troy Baker, this is an actor I love. Yeah. When I'm playing this, I never thought about this is Troy Baker, this is an actor I love. Joel. This is just Joel, yeah.
I don't want to fuck with this dude.
Yeah, and that's incredible.
Because he always has a brick. Yeah. Even if you think he doesn't have a brick, Joel always has a brick.
And what's the name of the actress in Bioshock Infinite?
Jeez.
I'll look it up.
Cannot.
But I want to say, whoever that actress is who played Elizabeth...
Yeah, she's fantastic, too.
She's fantastic, and they had great chemistry, and it's the same thing here. Him and Ashley Johnson work so well together, and Ashley Johnson is an absolutely equal creative partner on that level.
I find it kind of interesting, too, that this is the first video game role that Ashley Johnson has, because I was looking at her IMDb. Yeah. I knew I recognized her voice because she plays Terra in Teen Titans. She's really good in that. That's kind of a smaller role in that show. But
it's Courtney Draper as Elizabeth. And
I remember the Courtney part.
Right, and Troy Baker and Courtney Draper, just perfectly matched video game, voice couple, and same thing here with him and Ashley Johnson.
But again, asking Troy Baker questions about these games, with whichever one he started first, did he then feel like he was cheating on either Courtney Draper or Ashley Johnson when it's all of a sudden... Now he's playing this other grizzled, hard character with, this surrogate daughter figure that he has to try to learn to love and protect? There are such weird, specific parallels between these two games or revolving around the Troy Baker roles. That's what the fuck? How did this happen? It's so weirdly precise where it's like feeding into the Bioshock Infinite like multiple worlds thing. It's like Last of Us is some really far away, really bizarre, like it's like interpretational man lighthouse thing going on. Like it's just like so different. Like the infected are Comstock or whatever.
Yeah. So
Humanity
you are
is
the
Comstock.
infected. Yes. It's crazy, and overall they are completely different games.
Yeah, they're completely different, but it's like there's just like
Yeah.
weird little like specific similarities. It's like that's so strange.
So let's talk about Ashley Johnson here.
Okay.
Equally good.
Yeah.
So great.
There's so much like her, and especially because they give particularly for like over the summer section, she gets like Ellie is very very talkative for that section of the game. It's like sort of like they play with that because then like particularly in winter and spring she becomes a lot more terse as she sort of like retracts into herself and becomes very Jolie. But at the beginning section of the game, like there's just all these really wonderful touches. Like I like how she has that like book of like puns and stuff that like a couple of times she starts reading these like really terrible puns out of. And some of them are just
I love all the little
fantastic.
Personality touches, like her trying to whistle and her singing and things.
And then, she like learns how to whistle kind of over the course of the game through your like listening to her just like ambient dialogue.
Yeah, she just feels so alive, and the difference between her and Joel is Joel is kind of Joel throughout the game. Our understanding of him changes, his arc develops and stuff. But with Ashley Johnson and Ellie. Sorry, we're talking about.
I was trying to figure out if
you're
wanting to say Ellie or Troy Baker, and I couldn't figure.
No,
it out.
I was thinking there's too many names in too many similar scenarios here. Sorry,
Sam, Henry, Bill.
No, but with Ellie, it's like
Marlene,
she definitely Ashley Johnson has to go to a much deeper, darker place as the game goes along, and hit these moments in the character that really define her, and it's fantastic. And also, the motion capture, the physicality of that character is so interesting to me because it really is like Ashley Johnson. I think is like 29 or something.
But she's not 15.
No, but definitely the physicality of a 15-year-old in this environment, very plausible, very well thought through, very lived in.
Yeah.
I would say that about both their performances.
She swears a lot.
Oh, she swears like
a teenager.
Yes. It's just fantastically done. And again, the role they share, I would be... In these interviews, did they ever talk about, did they record together? Or
I mean, because they didn't record, like, they performed.
Okay.
Like, that's... I mean, I don't know about, like, the ambient dialogue stuff, but, like, any, like, conversation they had with each other, I'm sure they were together. But, like, they had studios, they wore the suits with the ping pong balls, like, the whole 9 yards.
And it totally comes across. It's like watching a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
When those scenes come. And it's really cool.
Yeah, and, like, one of the great touches they make in this game is they have, like, those sort of, like, conversation prompts that you get with Ellie every now and then. It's like, you're walking through the record store, and then she sees, here's some records, and you, like, go up and press triangle, and it's like, what the fuck is all this bullshit? What did you people do? Like, that's one of the things that I think is brilliant about, like, specifically about the 20 years later sort of, like, structure of the game, is that not only has Joel survived the apocalypse and survived 20 years of it, but he lived, like, an adult life. Like, he had a daughter who was, like, 12 years old before all the shit went down. Yeah, like, he was an adult. Like, he lived a life, like, had a life planned out for him in the real proper world before everything went down, and then he had to live a whole other life with, like, into it. And then Ellie is, like, 15 or 14, so she is born into this post-apocalyptic world well past the point that anybody's trying to fix anything. Like, by the time she's born, everything's fucked already. So it's like, so they have this really interesting dynamic where she knows absolutely nothing about what the world was like before. So she's just like, so when she finds the boat, she's like, what the fuck were boats? Did you, like everybody just have boats? What did you use boats for? What are records? Like, I think one of the best ones, because you're with Sam also, like the other little kid, and they find an ice cream machine. That's a great one. Is just like Sam is explaining to Ellie what an ice cream machine is. It's like, it's this machine that plays this song while you're driving around a neighborhood, and then kids come out and buy ice cream, and Ellie's just like, oh, come on, you're fucking bullshitting me. That's stupid. Like, there's no way that's real. And Joel's like, no, it's an ice cream machine.
Yeah.
And then you realize, ice cream machines are really fucking weird, aren't they?
All right, so that's the performances. I mean, there's we already talked about Nolan North and
he's great.
just great use of him. Like, I hope Naughty Dog finds a great role for him like that in everything they do from now on.
Like, they should do that for, like, all of their, like Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson should also be in all their games now, but, like, in these weird cameo roles.
But I love the idea that, Naughty Dog, makes this game, they have David, and it's like, they just need someone who can be a great utility player for this scene, or this set of scenes, and it's like, go to our star, and do that.
Fucking Nolan North, and then you also give Nolan North, like, the ability to, like, really stretch his legs as an actor, like, give a super different performance. And
again, acting completely without ego. It's not about, he's not being a star in those scenes. He's being that character.
Yeah.
And it's great. And that's one of the things Nolan North is best for, is that he can be the biggest character in a game, or the Penguin in our Arkham City, and he's equally good at whatever.
Or just
he does.
like Thug number 8.
Right.
That was my favorite thing to do in the Batman games. It's like that random thug is what, and I did it for this one with Sam Riegel and Liam O'Brien too. It's like, that random thug is voiced by Nolan North. Yep. I'm going to hunt you down, Nolan North. I'm going to hunt you down.
All right. Briefly, let's talk about the graphics, because we did not touch upon it much yet. Holy fucking shit!
Yeah, it is a damn fine looking game. Particularly the lighting engine, I think is. I mean, like the Uncharted games, like it's clearly built on the same technology. I mean, obviously, but like they also have this very vibrant, like just beautiful natural world aesthetic to them. That is like, but yeah, they definitely raised the bar here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the full, like the pre-rendered cutscenes are movie quality, just absolutely, and then the actual in-game engine stuff is so flawless. There's no problems with texture pop-ins or anything. I only ever noticed one glitch. I got stuck on a wall and had to reload a save.
There's a little bit when you're riding the horse. There is a little bit of like texture pop-in because you're moving a lot faster than you normally do, and it was like I kind of noticed it. But I was like, whatever.
Yeah, but
the frame rate's usually really consistent at 30 frames per second. Like very few drops there.
But the sheer amount of detail on display, and even more for me, just the size of the environments they build. Yeah. There's no there's no inherent reason they had to go to the amount of work they did, showing an entirely destroyed Boston and all this other stuff, where there's just the environments, the skyboxes just seem to go on forever. Yeah. They put so much thought into it, but they really, everything they could do to make this feel lived in and big and three-dimensional and detailed, they did.
Yeah, like we said, like the dorm rooms are a really great example of that. Like they're like, especially when you go to the liquor store. Also, when you like have that whole combat sequence in there, it's like this is a liquor store. Like it's just like they put so much detail and thought into every single environment that it's just like, this is it. Like this is what this place would look like, and it's so perfectly realized. And there's all these little details that I can pick up on, and little like bits and pieces to scavenge out of the environment.
Are these the best graphics of this console generation?
I would say so.
I'm just trying to think.
Like Beyond Two Souls, it's going to come out in October.
Right.
Maybe we'll be competitive with that.
I think the
like as soon as like in terms of console games specifically, we should say, because if it's a PC game, like that's not really fair. But yeah.
Right. I mean, the equivalent. This is definitely the best on the PS3 probably, and the equivalent on the 360 would be Halo 4, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of just eking out everything that system can do.
Yeah, the one thing that would be competitive is like Crysis 3, but I don't know how. I know how that looks on a PC, but I don't know how that what the console versions look like for that. So.
It's pretty amazing when you compare games from like 6-7 years ago to this. It's like it looks like a different generation. It just does. It's amazing. Yeah. Like think of how much like what will The Last of Us for the PS4, like the last big PS4 game, look like? It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
If they can even make a jump that big, who knows?
Yeah.
But all right, music. It's written by. Gustavo Santaolalla, Santaolalla, sorry.
Sure.
Yeah. Santaolalla, something like that. I feel suddenly horribly racist trying to pronounce his name. But anyway, 2-time Academy Award winner for Brokeback Mountain and Babel. Yes, both have very good scores. This is a really damn good video game score.
Yeah, it is. And something just really cool for me where it's like I pre-ordered the game from Amazon, and part of that was like a code to just download the soundtrack. That's like a $10 soundtrack. So that is an awesome pre-order bonus.
That's
like and it was cool because like I think this is probably something that a lot of PS3 games have, but I just obviously haven't like got it for any of those. Whereas like you just put the code in onto the PS3 and download it onto the PS3, and it's like just sticking a USB stick in there, and it's just like they're just like MP3 files.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool.
Yep. So we played a little bit of it at the beginning. It's really good. I feel like. I mean, I also want to say, definitely for me, the sound design is right up there with the best of this generation, because it's just the amount of, like, sound is so important, and I can't even imagine myself having played it this way without surround sound and just how important that directionality is. But you played it in stereo, and I'm sure it was
it's
fine.
Yeah.
But it's really cool, like how much sound influences your gaming, just the little sounds it'll make if you are close to an enemy, for instance.
Yeah.
And then the music also the music ratchets up tension so much, and then it also underlines emotions so well.
Yeah.
It does everything a score for this kind of game should do and more.
Yeah, and it's such a great score because it's like it is such a weird video game score. Like I've heard lots and lots of video game soundtracks, but even for like obscure like indie type games, like this is a super weird score. Like it is so earthy, so naturalistic. It's so just like acoustic guitar, some drums, like some like weird sort of like folk like didgeridoo and stuff like that in the background. It's like that's it. Like there's no like big bombastic orchestra. There's no like choral sections. It's just like it's just like basically this very earthy, natural folk music, and it's like, man, that is for a huge, big budget AAA exclusive for a console. That is a weird ass like this whole thing. It's like it's kind of amazing that something like this could get made, but like specifically that soundtrack is like that is a bold thing to go after like this really strange soundtrack for this game.
Well,
and
and
it fits perfectly.
Going off that and this being a very weird big game, it's also been amazingly successful.
Yeah, it's sold really well. It's the best-selling game, I think, of this year so far. It's the best new-selling IP since L.A. Noire.
And that's pretty incredible, because after playing it, I certainly would not peg it to have that kind of mainstream appeal.
Yeah, but I mean, they marketed the shit out of this. Like I said, if you're reading those sites, the hype train was heavy on The Last of Us.
If you have a PS3, you're getting this game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's worth every penny. Now, I have to leave in a little bit, so we don't have much time to talk about this. So, briefly, do you want to say something about the multiplayer?
Okay. Just the multiplayer is great. Like, don't take it as this cynical. Like, I've heard the Uncharted multiplayer is also really good, but I never got into that. But it's like, it is like natural to what The Last of Us is. Like, it's not just like super generic team deathmatch. It's just, if you've got The Last of Us, don't write the multiplayer off and give it a try. It's really cool. Also, this is the only thing I've ever seen that does cool Facebook integration, because sort of the idea, like the context around the multiplayer is that you're leading this group of survivors in every single multiplayer game you play. The better you do, sort of the more survivors you get, and like the better your survivors are doing. And at the main screen, you just have 75 survivors. Like 6 are sick, like 5 are like hungry or something, and then you have like this weird like running tally of like for instance, since I connected it to my Facebook account, it'll like bring your friends' names in and be like, Jonathan Lack is looking pretty hungry, or it's like someone like Kurt's looking at like reading a book or something. It's just like it would just be random names if you don't connect to your Facebook, but it's like this really funny little detail.
Nice.
Where it's like, my friend Rob died. Sorry, Rob. He was like one of the first guys to go, like one of the first people who died. I was like, it's like one of my best friends I've known for like my whole life. Like, sorry, dude.
That's funny. That
sucks that you're like one of the first ones to go.
I hope we see more fun stuff like that on the PS4, because I know there's some really nice, just kind of subtle social integration.
Yeah,
on the
it's
PS4.
just like a really funny, just little, like it doesn't like send anything to your Facebook account or anything. It's just like a funny little, hey, you just get like, it's this weird little personalization aspect to it.
Yeah. All right, so Last of Us.
Really quickly, I have one question for you. Because we've kind of moved past this in Winter. When you played Winter, I'm curious.
Okay.
Did you open up Ellie's backpack and look at her artifacts?
I didn't know you could do that.
She has specific artifacts for herself, and when you look at them, like the collectibles, she like talks about them, and like there's like a letter to her mom. She has the picture that she gets that's like Joel and Sarah. She's got Riley's like Firefly medal. It is a super cool detail that like I just kind of stumbled onto.
Okay, well I'll look at that. Because when I play the game again, I'm glad there's a New Game Plus option.
Yeah,
I'll probably use that. And that's
definitely.
I'll look at
when you play as Ellie, open up the backpack, because she's also got all the comic books you've collected so far. It's a really, really clever, smart detail that when I like noticed it, I was like, holy shit, you guys, Naughty Dog is on their game, because that is a really clever thing that they did.
All right. So, anything else to say before we do final thoughts?
No, let's do final thoughts.
All right, final thoughts, Last of Us. How would you sum up sort of our conversation and where you would kind of put this game in the canon for you?
It's one of the best games I've ever played. Like, easily, and not only is it one of the best games I've ever played, I think when you look at it, you can see it's one of the only AAA games that I have ever played that gives me the same feeling as indie games I have played over the last couple of years of like, you guys are doing something crazy, you're doing something different, and you are finally figuring out how to play with the medium of being a video game in a very significant way, where it's like just little details like that of like this mechanical thing of you looking at your collectibles and those having been contextualized, that when you switch characters, you have different collectibles that you have not seen before and add in minor story details. Like something like that, only a video game can do it. And it's like the little details like that are all over this, and the way they mesh story, like the theme of survival and the fact that it is a survival game, just that pairing is fucking genius. So this is sort of a golden standard for how you make like phenomenal video games going forward in the future, I think.
Absolutely. I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. Being a gamer at this time is so exciting. It's more exciting than being a fan of movies, even more than TV, because TV is also in a very good era right now. But with TV's been around a long time. Gaming is still young. Gaming, when 100 years from now the textbook on the history of gaming is written, Last of Us will be a major moment in that. I have no doubt of that. And it's just something I can't compare to any other experience of playing this game and feeling like I'm living the history of this art form.
Yeah.
And that this is one of those moments that we will come back to look on as, that's when things, if not when things changed, that was a milestone.
Yeah,
that
was like, this is how you fucking do it, guys.
Yeah. It just feels like this is pushing gaming to its potential, like what it has always had the potential to be. But and I think many games have come very close. I think BioShock Infinite to me is still very close qualitatively in how I view Last of Us. I love both of them almost equally, but I think I give Last of Us the edge because it's a little more consistent gameplay wise. It doesn't have some of the fetch questy stuff that BioShock Infinite gets in its latter half.
Yeah, it doesn't have like the pacing issues that Infinite has.
But in either case, it's so cool to see BioShock Infinite do such a phenomenal video game story that really couldn't be told as anything other than a video game. And then Last of Us to push that even further and have that be the same year at the end of this console generation just makes me super excited for the PS4, because imagine what Naughty Dog could do with this kind of thing.
God, I can't wait to see what this team does next.
This
is so unbelievable. This game.
And it's just, I really do feel like this is probably the single best campaign of this console generation on the main three consoles. This and BioShock Infinite are my two favorite games of this generation, at least in terms of, as I said, campaign. There are other games that have other elements to them. But in any case, it's incredible. It's we've already said our piece on it. It's amazing. Just the emotional heft of it, the thematic heft. It really that feeling you get when you get to the end of not knowing what to feel or even how to feel. It's unprecedented.
Yeah, it sticks with you. Like, you keep on thinking about it for a really long... Like, I still think about it every now and then. I'm just like, man, that's like the giraffe scene. Like, I just like think that was so crazy. Like, just like so beautiful. Like, the revelations I had unfold in front of me about my opinions about like the game's portrayal of humanity through that scene and stuff. It's just, it's awesome.
Yes. So we will be talking in a couple weeks here about our top 10 video games of all time. Personal lists. Will yours be on here, or will Last of Us be on yours?
Yeah, I can't. I haven't sat down and taken out the ruler and measured everything yet. But I can't imagine it not being really high up there.
Yep, same for me, and we'll be doing that in mid-July for you guys. We already did our top 10 favorite movies, top 10 favorite TV shows. We gotta finish that trinity off, so we'll be doing that soon. I did recently sit down and make just a list, and I'm like, well, I don't know how the fuck I whittled this one down.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's just something to mention here, and I'm glad Last of Us came out before I sat down to do that, because it's just a masterpiece.
Without a doubt.
So round of applause, Naughty Dog.
Yay. Round of applause, Troy Baker.
Yes.
And we are continuing well into the future, where it's like, there were a lot of video games that had Troy Baker's voice in it at E3, so...
Oh, yeah. He's one of the stars of Metal Gear Solid 5, I know.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he was one of the voices in the trailer for Titanfall.
Yep.
Definitely, so
they've just got him chained in a room somewhere reading lines.
Yes, Troy Baker, he's the new Nolan North.
Yes.
And hey, Troy Baker and Nolan North both in this fucking video. I mean, they've been in bunches of video. They were both in Arkham City. Or whatever,
they could do a buddy cop video game together.
It's okay, this is like a weird thing. We're like wrapping this whole thing up. Another video game, something I did not know about, but it's actually really fucking awesome. Troy Baker is the new voice for the Joker in the new Arkham game.
I've heard about that. That's what I wanted to talk about. Yeah. That's going to be so great.
Yeah, there was like a video that came out of E3 that like had a bit of his Joker. It's really good. Like, it's
I was
a very
actually-
Mark Hamill-y style Joker.
I know this sounds petty. I was not necessarily planning on playing Arkham Origins immediately until I heard about that. And it's like, I will be picking that up, like 10 copies of it.
Yeah,
on day one.
and when I heard that, it's like, oh, they're bringing the Joker. Like, why? You did the Joker so well, but you did him so much in Asylum, in City. Like, why do you need to bring him back in Origins? It's like, well, at least, I love Mark Hamill to death. Like, he's the best Joker as far as I'm concerned, but it's like,
if you're
we
gonna
get a
replace
new
him-
Joker. Like, we get a new interpretation, and that is from an actor that I really admire and think is is one of the best voice actors in the business. So
Yeah, so that's going to be fun, and we can hopefully talk about that game when it comes out later this
Yeah.
year. This is going to be a gaming-heavy year on the podcast, man. So much coming out.
The consoles are coming out in November. Like,
I
it's
know, and there's so many games coming out before then too, like Beyond Two Souls,
Beyond Two Souls,
which is
Grand
coming
Theft
out
Auto
on my birthday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you know what I'll do? That's my 21st birthday. I'll get some liquor and play Beyond Two Souls and get drunk. Okay.
If that game is at all like Heavy Rain, not a game you want to get drunk and play. I'm just going to say that right now. Like that, if it's like Heavy Rain, like you just end up killing yourself. Like if you're a person who gets depressed when you get drunk, don't do that. Like health warning right now.
Okay.
Don't do that.
All right. Well, we will find out whether or not I die of alcohol poisoning playing Beyond Two Souls or not this October.
All right.
For now, we're going to figure out what we're going to talk about next week. See you guys later.